All right, we are about to get started, and and before I formally start the meeting, now that everyone's starting to get vaccinated and a little bit of freedom again, and the ability to go somewhere, I really appreciate everybody gathering together on this beautiful Saturday afternoon when we have so many other things that we could be doing. So thank everybody. Thank you everybody for your service. And without any further ado, I'm going to call this meeting to order. This is a board retreat for the Pasadena area Community College District. This meeting is called to order, and we will start off as usual with a roll call. And for that, we'll turn to Mr. Bucklehide.
Sure. Trustee Osterling.
Present.
Trustee Chin Lau.
Here.
Trustee Watt.
Here.
Trustee Silver.
Here.
Trustee Brown.
Here.
Trustee Martin.
Here.
Trustee Fellow.
Here.
Student Trustee Ramirez.
Here.
They're all present and accounted for, sir.
Alex, I think you should also ask each person if they have a copy of the agenda, and if they, even though I know we're not taking any action, I think just to cross all of our T's and dot our I's, could you do the standard questions that you usually ask?
And do you need to make the usual announcement, COVID meeting announcement?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay. Thanks, Alex.
Sure, just a moment. Thanks, Dr. Anderson.
Yeah. Just to be on the safe side. Okay.
Bringing it up, it'll be a minute.
Yeah, no problem.
All right. So I'd like to make clear for the record of this meeting, and it should be reflected in the minutes, that this Board of Trustees meeting is conducted pursuant to California Government Code Section 54953, as amended by Governor Gavin Newsom in Executive Order N2520, dated March 12th, 2020, and that all trustees are calling in remotely and participating by remote video or teleconference. We took the roll. I would now like to request that each trustee in turn respond to the following questions. I will start with Trustee Chin Lau. Trustee Chin Lau, can you hear me well?
Yes.
Were you able to hear our proceedings up until now?
Yes.
Do you have a copy of the agenda for this meeting?
Yes.
Next, I'd like to ask Trustee Osterling to respond to the same questions. Trustee
Yes.
Osterling, can you hear me well?
Yes, yes, and yes.
Thank you. Next, I'd like to request that Trustee Brown respond to the same questions. Trustee Brown, can you hear me well?
Yes, yes. And
Were you able to hear
yes.
our, thank you.
Good, yes.
Next, I'd like to ask that Trustee Silver respond to the same questions.
Yes, yes, and yes.
Thank you. Next, I'd like to request that Trustee Waugh respond to the same questions.
Yes, yes, yes.
Next, I'd like to request that Trustee Martin respond to the same questions.
Yes, yes, yes.
Next, I'd like to request that Trustee Fellow respond to the same.
Yeah, yes to all three.
Thank you. And next, I'd like to ask Student Trustee Ramirez to respond to the same questions.
Yes, yes, and yes, it will.
Thank you. I would now like to ask that any member of the Board of Trustees speak up at this time if they have not been able to clearly hear any trustee. Hearing no comment, the record should reflect that all trustees present have indicated that they were able to hear all other trustees clearly. I would next request that any trustee speak up at this time if such trustee has any reason to believe, based on voice recognition or otherwise, that any person representing themselves to be a certain trustee is not truly so. Hearing no comment, the record should reflect that no trustee has expressed doubt that any trustees are the parties participating by teleconference. I would now like to advise the trustees and the public that any votes taken during this remote conference portion of the meeting must be taken by roll call. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bucklehide. And right before we got started, Trustee Silver asked if we were meeting in person, if we would have cookies available, and which reminded us all of the great baked goods that Erica usually brings to our in-person meetings, which hopefully we'll be getting back to soon. But in that spirit, I'm going to share my screen just briefly, and I need the host to allow screen sharing for me just briefly here.
There you go. You're good.
All right. Thank you. So with that in mind, I'm going to share my screen.
That's funny.
That's cute.
Okay, and let's get started. Our next item of business is Pledge of Allegiance. And I think we should have the person who wins the distance award calling in the furthest, and that would be our facilitator, Helen Benjamin. Helen, could you lead us in the pledge, please?
Most certainly. Do you stand?
We can remain seated so we stay on screen. Yeah.
Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Thank you, Helen. And okay, we have welcome and agenda review. I'm not too sure exactly what we need to cover for this, but again, thank you everybody for taking time out of your Saturday afternoon when we have great weather and some of us have the ability to finally get out of our houses again. The agenda today is it's a retreat. There are no agenda items that are calling for a vote, and the retreat agenda items are number 4. We're going to review and finalize our board goals, and Helen will lead us in that activity. She'll facilitate. The trustee fellowship project, which Linda and Berlinda have worked on extensively, and Erica, we're going to go through that. And then lastly, we're going to talk about the board self-evaluation timeline. And hopefully we're going to do all of that and get everybody out of here by 6 p.m. so we have a little bit of our evening left to us. And that's our agenda review. Erica, is that what you had in mind for this agenda item?
I think it was just, yes, it was just
Okay.
standard there in case there was
Yeah.
anything that needed to be changed or removed.
Oh, okay. Yeah, very good. And then next item 3 is public comment on non-agenda items. Alex, do we have any public comment on non-agenda items today?
None today.
Okay, thank you. And then that's great. So we're going to move right into our agenda items. The first agenda item again is our board goals. We've had discussions on that, and our objective, our mandate actually is to get those board goals for our next fiscal year finalized at this retreat. And to that end, we've asked Dr. Helen Benjamin to join us today as a facilitator to help us complete that task. Do we have anything written as far as, what we've discussed so far for this that we can put up on the screen? Helen, you're muted.
Helen, we can't hear you. Yeah, you're muted.
There we go.
Sorry, I'll just leave it on.
No
Alex,
worries.
are you able to make me a host so I can project
I
the
believe
document?
you can already share screen. I made it for multiple people.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And when we get to that in a few minutes, I'll project it and we'll walk through.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So
Helen,
are you ready for me, Trustee Osterling?
the floor is yours.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
first of all, I want to thank you for the opportunity to work with you. And I've talked to some of you, and I want to just tell you a little bit about myself because most of you, I don't think, know me. But I retired. I worked in California for 26 and a half years, 20 of those years as a president and chancellor. And all of my time was spent in the Contra Costa District. Before I retired, I began to do some consulting. I started with San Francisco City College, helping them with some of their issues a long time ago before I retired. And when I led the effort in the state for the the examination for our accrediting commission. That was an amazing project in which the CEOs got involved. And I retired in 2016, December. And since that time, I've been consulting. I consult with about, I don't know, maybe 15 different boards. So I do that work because I'm really committed to the work that boards do and in assisting them in any way I can. I serve as chair of the board for Excelsior College in Albany. So I've been on both sides of it, where I'm supervised by a board, reporting to a board, and then serving on a board. And now I'm chair for that board. So my experience runs the gamut in terms of being involved with boards. And because you're doing your goals today, working on your goals for 21, 22, I want us to start with just a little activity to kind of get you in the reflective mood before we go into the future mode. I would like for you to think back over this year, and I know it's been a very different kind of year for all of you, and just think of one thing that's happened in 2020, from January 2020 to now, regarding the district, your college, or your board, one thing of which you are very proud as a trustee. And just share that one thing and take about a minute to do that. And this would include you as well, Superintendent President.
Okay.
Just one thing, just a moment to reflect on all the good stuff that's happened. And then we'll move into thinking about where you want to put your focus for 21, 22. So, yes.
I just wanted to note for the record that we've lost Trustee Martin.
Was in his car.
Yeah. He's on his phone in his car. I'm sure he'll
come back in again. Okay, I'll watch the admit place. Okay. And Berlin has her hand up.
I see that Trustee Brown has her hand up. She wants to be first.
I do, because if I'm not first, then someone else will take it away. So what I am really proud of was the process that we just went through for accreditation. I mean, I went through one before, and it was nothing like this one. Everyone was like so unified. We passed with flying colors. It was just a wonderful experience. And I think it's something that I know I am very proud of on the college. So that's what I could think about.
Thank you. That's something to really be proud of. That's an amazing achievement. Yes, Trustee Osterling.
I'm happy to go next. We've had a very interesting year, as everybody knows, and as I think back and reflect upon it, one of the things I'm most proud of is the way our superintendent and administration very, very quickly pivoted from in-class to online and kept the college and our faculty and staff and students safe. And as a result of that quick pivot, and it seemed like Erica was always 1 or 2 steps ahead of what was coming out of the state level. And as a result, the impact of COVID to our campus constituents, faculty, staff, students, etc., was as minimal as it could possibly be.
I think I'll build on what Jim said, and I think I'm just very impressed with the whole nation, the universities and schools and elementary schools that went virtual, and I give kudos to teachers who did that, because if this was 10 years ago, I don't know what we would have done. So, and I also have to say, as a PCC student, which I like even better than being a trustee, I think I got an A in Italian. I'm getting an A. And I love being a student at PCC. It's the greatest university I've ever been at. Excellent.
Thank you.
Now I know why Berlinda stepped in, because you too took mine. So I'll just touch that I was a bystander, but the story that Erica told about the movement of tens of thousands of faculty and staff with so quickly missing only one day is awe-inspiring. And especially when I consider my own college-age son, whose private four-year college flailed, was in no way as quick to move as PCC was. So now, since I'm the third to mention that, I will also mention, I had a couple things. Well, I am so proud of how, again, it's, our leadership has, and then our whole board is so unified in lifting up the voiceless and supporting unrepresented first generation students, and we are doing whatever we can fully, wholeheartedly, and I'm so proud of us for that.
Excellent. Thank you.
Well, I would have also, as a PCC student also, I really have to concur that the virtual classes have been great. It's something I really had hoped for a long time. We've been hoping faculty would come up with it, and so all of a sudden they were able to spur ahead. But really, I'm amazed at how well, at least the professors that I'm taking classes with, have really responded to the students and how innovative they've been. But I want to say I'm really especially proud of the DEI initiatives and movement that this college has undertaken. All of our stakeholders have just been so engaged and have really created space to really speak about this and create and be so inclusive of everyone. And I just recently sat in on sort of a town hall where we had the students, we had community speaking, and I think that certainly our staff really went the extra mile to make sure that there was safe space and that there wasn't, that everyone felt like they were included and that their voices were heard. So, kudos to the leadership of our college to be able to do that.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Martin, I don't know how much you heard before you lost contact with us, but what everybody's doing now is sharing one thing of which they're very proud from January 2020 till now.
I'll go
And
next. Oh, is John going next?
Oh, go ahead.
John, you go ahead. You go ahead because you're on the phone.
I'm going to let you go ahead because I just heard the question.
Okay, so you still need to have time to reflect. Okay.
Well, I'll get at least 30 seconds, and if you do really make me go long, I'll get a little longer.
Yeah, Sandra, you go first, and then Trustee Martin.
I'm certainly proud of the fact, and certainly many trustees have already mentioned this, but along the lines of the financial stability for the college, going into the pandemic, there was certainly a lot of concerns about how our budget situation will unfold and what our budget numbers will look like. And I think that the administration did a really good job of explaining and also projecting our finances for the last year and moving forward so that there are no surprises.
Mm-hmm.
And, when we talk about having the board being the fiduciary, having that fiduciary responsibility as a priority, I am really proud of the fact that we're moving forward with solid finances at this time.
Thank you. Excellent. You ready, Trustee Martin?
Well, I'll take a shot. And it's from what I've heard, I'm going to try to pick a different angle than what has been already expressed. And one of the things that I have tremendously appreciated was what I would call the leadership of the college in promoting good information regarding health centered on the virus. The regular weekly reports that are extremely factual, and the way the college has tried to be supportive in vaccinations has just showed another area where the college has taken a leadership role. And obviously health right now is probably the most critical thing in fighting the virus. So I've been very proud of that.
Excellent, thank you. Student Trustee Ramirez and then Trustee Andrianos.
Thank you. So I just wanted to build off a little bit about what Trustee Osterling said about how quickly administration was able to pivot from in-person to online. And I just want to highlight how I'm proud of how administration was able to always keep students in the loop. That even though a lot of things weren't really figured out, we were sort of able to figure things out together with students in that process. So that was really awesome. also how PCC was able to quickly address the digital divide with like services like giving out loaner laptops and all the necessary technology that students need to be able to succeed. That was really awesome to see as well.
Okay, thank you very much.
So what I would say is that the college really kept moving forward in spite of everything we were dealing with since basically we had to all go home. The board approved the EMP, the FMP, the college won the John Rice Student Success Award and completed the accreditation process, went through an accreditation visit, went through the sale of COP bonds to fund the Serafian building, went through a process to take out trans so that we could pay our bills now that we have deferrals. It's just, you've all highlighted all of the way that we reacted to and addressed the pandemic. But in addition to that, we also did all this stuff too and kept it going. And I know some other colleges kind of stopped some of their processes because they really had to focus. And I just am proud that we were able to do both.
Well, that is such an excellent report. And I really congratulate you on all the things you've done in moving the college forward in spite of the challenge you faced. And then you obviously met the challenge very, very well.
Hey,
and so
hey,
now,
Helen,
yes.
Can I have one more bite at this apple?
As many bites as you like, as long as you don't go over a minute or two.
I'll keep it under a minute. One thing that I'm really proud of is that PCC has truly been a leader statewide in the DEI initiatives. We have 4 board members that participated, as well as the Superintendent Androgenis, as well as our various campus constituency groups. And in particular, I want to call out our student trustee, David Ramirez, who sat on not one, but 2 different statewide DEI task force, was a very active contributor. And the other trustees on those task forces, myself included, really appreciated the student perspective as we went through and did our work.
That's incredible. Thank you. And congratulations again. And I think that what you provided is a good backdrop for moving forward to discuss your goals and hopefully get them all agreed to today so that you have this in place. As you know, I don't have to tell you, but I'll say it anyway because we're talking about this. It is really important for a board to have goals. It's an accreditation requirement, but you don't have them only because it's an accreditation requirement. It also sets a stage for you, determines what you're going to spend your time on, how you're going to do your work. And this gives direction as well to your superintendent president. So in this effort, so I got a call about coming, and I think a couple of weeks ago. And since that time, I've met with an ad hoc committee you appointed, trustees Silver, Waugh, and Brown, and then your student trustee, Ramirez. And so we did a little work and have a draft for you to review today. And whenever I work with the board, I always like to talk to the chair to see, and the chair was not in this subgroup, so this ad hoc group. So we had a conversation yesterday, Trustee Osterling and I, and he pointed out to me that he likes to have metrics, and I most certainly agree. So I added some metrics to these. So what we'll do, and we have 90 minutes left, and I'm going to move you pretty quickly to decisions on each one of these and make sure we're done by what at your time will be 4 o'clock with this section. So we have here 7 board goals, and you're looking at number 1, and then there are action steps to make that the board needs to take to meet those goals. And then we also included in the ad hoc group what the CEO would need to do in order for the board to meet these goals. Because I know that you've been through a lot of training. A lot of you are active with CCLC on the board and working with the different groups. For several years, I did their chair training for boards for about 4 or 5 years. So I know that you guys always had somebody present in those meetings, and that was, so I know you're in tune to what your role is. Your role typically as a board is to determine policy, to determine what it is that you want to happen. You don't go out there and do all that stuff because you don't work at the college. You don't want 8 people running your district. You want 1. That's why you hired your superintendent president. It is that person's job to make sure that all the things you want done get done. And you have to monitor and do all kinds of things like that. And then you have to state what you want. And so that's what your goals do. So that's where we're going to start. So the first goal has to do with service to students. And the broad goal is to ensure strong customer service culture and service to students. And there are 3 actions that we have here that you want to take. So the first one, and before I go any further, would the ad hoc committee members like to say something, or you, Trustee Osterling, before we go into the specifics?
Okay, hearing nothing, let's keep rolling.
Okay.
Thank you, Helen.
Okay, so the first action you want to take, you will expect.
Berlinda had her hand raised.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed that.
Somebody, I can't see.
I was looking for my reaction. So one thing we, the ad hoc committee, discussed really a lot was the issues that we are getting from student services. And that's why we thought this was very important. And I'm hoping that my fellow trustees would understand the reason why we're doing this, because the customer service definitely needs some help. And the experiences that the students are having can be improved. And as board members, we want to ensure that our students are getting the best treatment possible. And we understand that customer service is where every business runs. Students can be turned off because of the way they're treated. Or I had an experience as a student a couple of weeks ago, but I just decided, well, whatever, it's not that serious. But as we spoke in the group, I was encouraged. I says, we need to address these issues. So with 30,000 students, there's so much room for us to improve. So this is one of the reasons why we made that one of our goals.
Okay, and so in order to reach that goal, your ad hoc group came up with 3 actions. The first is that you will expect surveys as a best practice and receive results that demonstrate the level of student satisfaction with services they receive, particularly in key areas identified by students, financial aid, counseling, et cetera. That's what you want to know about customer service. You expect these surveys. In order for this to get done, the recommendation is that the CEO then, because you don't go out and do the survey, you don't do any of this work, she has to determine student services to be surveyed to meet then there could be some discussion about what it is you want to meet your goal and advise the board of results. Once she does that, which services will be surveyed, what kind of survey. She has to see that the survey is conducted with the goal for continuous improvement and include appropriate parties involved in survey development and administration and interpretation. The metric, which is really important, and that's how do you know what success looks like? How do you know you've achieved this goal? The survey results will be presented to the board as you have requested in 1.1. That's the metric. There's another piece to this though. That's the first part, to do the surveys. 1.2, review and monitor data to help track progress for continuous improvement in customer service to students once the survey is completed. And then the results have to be shared with the board and a plan presented. If there are weaknesses in that as a result of the survey, then the superintendent president presents you a plan as to how these weaknesses will no longer exist, that area will be strengthened. And then the metric would be a schedule is established for ongoing monitoring of student satisfaction with customer service and a plan for improvement developed and reviewed by the board. So that's the second action. The third action step is to develop policies if needed. And here's your really important role. So after you've gone through all this and you see what the students are saying, are there any policies that need to be developed as a result of what you've learned about how satisfied students are with the service they're receiving? And the CEO's role is to make those policy and other kinds of recommendations for strengthening student services. So that's goal 1. So are there any reactions? Does this sound good to everybody? Is there anything anybody would like changed on goal 1 around customer service to students? Does that sound okay to you?
So, I just wanted to interject. So I think that, as we thought, as Berlinda said, we were hearing some things from the students. And so we're hoping the CEO can help us key in, by bringing this data in to help us identify where there are gaps in the service. And I know Erica often talks about the services students in terms of customer service. So she actually was the one who kind of brought this to our attention as something that we could probably focus on that would help our students. But I think one of the things we talked about is how do we create sort of a continuous, continuously monitoring taking the pulse of where the students are. So, maybe once a year surveys may not be adequate. So those are things that I think that we, the board, can work with our superintendent on to have her help us identify when should we, what is reasonable to take the pulse so that we can have continuous improvement.
And see, the other thing that I didn't want to put too much on you at one time, but the other piece you have to consider is how long this will take. And all of this we'll talk about all the goals when we finish, but it sounds as though from what I'm not hearing that everybody's okay with goal 1.
Yeah, I
Yes,
just want to chime in with a logistical question. Erica, do we have the ability, when the customer service interface is either by phone or online, do we have the ability to follow that up with the survey? Many companies will do that. After you complete this call, would you like to take a brief survey? Do we have that capability, and are we using that currently?
I don't know.
Okay, thank you.
And that's one of the things she can investigate or have the staff investigate, researchers or whoever, to determine how you're going to survey, whether there'll be paper surveys at the point of service after they complete. All of that has to be worked out. We don't have a timeline in here, but you're saying these goals are for 21, 22. Some of these may get started and go into the next year. You may get them completed, because you should review these as part of your self-evaluation to see how much progress you made, or there's no point in having them. But they follow you, these should follow you all of 21, 22. And when you do your self-evaluation toward the end of 22, you are going to evaluate yourself against these goals you've established. And then you can make a determination as to which ones you completed and which ones you should continue. And that's part of the continuous improvement. Okay, so it sounds as though we're good with number 1, goal number 1.
Jim, if I may.
Yeah, John, go ahead. You've got the floor, John.
It's hard for me to raise my hand, so I'll just have to,
jump in.
Verbally say my hand's raised. Well, first, I wanted to express my appreciation to the committee and I think our host for obviously the tremendous amount of hard work on all these goals. And one of the things that I appreciate is this format of the 3 columns, the action steps and expectations. So I thought they've done a really superb job giving us a lot to work with and in the format itself. To the specifics of goal 1, I kind of had the same thought and question that Jim had, that the way I read this goal was more of a macro survey, exploring with students potential needs that are or are not being met. And I think there's a micro or internal part to the question that I appreciate Jim raised. How was the last, when you talked to somebody or you called somebody or you communicated with a college, what was the result of that connection? And were you pleased with what came out of that connection, more from an internal point? And I do appreciate our commentators' direction that these are the details that we work out with our superintendent president. But I kind of view them both as being important. The what are we doing or not doing, and then how well did we do the things that we are really trying to do internally.
Yes, and your comments serve as direction for her, because she has to come back to you to let you know how this is going to be done. So in the comments you're making, she can hear what it is you would like to see happen. So this is good. I was not trying to say anything negative there.
Yeah, this is one of the things that we discussed is, how do we continuously monitor for how the students are being served? So, I know I had brought up in both the statewide committee on financial aid and this committee is, maybe, do we look at things? Is it possible for us to do like an Uber type survey every time you leave, after getting service, can they just put a happy face on or, get sent an instant message? So those are things that we kind of talked over with Erica. And so hopefully we can look at those kinds of things.
Yeah, I see Berlinda's hand is up also.
Well, yeah, so that's a little area of concern because we do want to make the students aware that there is a survey available and want to make it as easy as possible. That's for the superintendents to figure out how easy can it be, but we don't want to get a survey with 10 people. We want something to be, that makes sense. So we know that we are improving. So I guess what John and Asterlin is saying, it's sort of in line. We want to make sure that, it could be
at the variety of points of service.
Yeah. It could be a random, thing that, oh, you are the one today that gets to fill out this. You get whatever, just fill it out.
And there are models, because they've been done in counseling. When students finish a counseling appointment, there's a way. So there are models out there for how it can be done.
Good.
I'm going to move us along, though, because we need to go to number 2. I want us to get through our 7. And we can come back at any point. So just let us know if you think of something and want to go back to one we've done already. Board Goal 2, the all-important student success. And the goal states, support student access and success and give student voice opportunities to respond to their needs. So the ad hoc committee has 2 actions here by the board. The first is to ensure that the needs of out-of-district students attending PCC are addressed. And my understanding is that you have a huge number because of your really good programs, I'm sure.
But I'd like to ask a question about that because
go ahead.
I don't understand this goal, ensuring the needs of out-of-district students attending PCC are addressed. What are you referring to?
Well,
I think when David is an out-of-district student, and I think what he had in mind actually can't be done. So David, you'll explain, but I remember him saying he wished that PCC could have come to his high school and talked to so that's
we can't do that.
So yeah, David, your question.
Yeah.
But I think we did talk about other things. I mean, we know that about 60 to 70% of our students are out of district. And so one of the things David brought up is that, there are out of district, we communicate a lot with our in-district students, but there may not be sufficient communication for our out of district students. So Dr. Benjamin recommended some things, that we could look at, social media. Certainly
Wait a
we
minute.
know that we're.
But Linda, we communicate with all students in the same way. The only in-district students we communicate with differently are high school students. So I'm just trying to understand, like there's no difference. When we send a message out to all students, it goes to all students, not just students in the Pasadena area. So
Yeah, so maybe we're doing all we can, and maybe this is one of the things we just can do. We can work with AS, maybe take a survey of our students and see, do they feel like, if you're in district or out of district, do you feel like you're getting the communication you need, or your needs are being met?
I see David's hand up, and David, you're next, and then I'm going to be next after David.
Okay, awesome.
And I'll put my turn in, Jim, when it's appropriate.
Okay, John, you're after David. Go ahead. Go ahead, David.
I just wanted to provide a little bit of background, I guess. So this sort of stemmed because I had noticed a lot how out-of-district students aren't always explicitly mentioned in many of the plans that the college sets. So like the technology master plan or even the educational master plan. And I'm not saying that the college gives discriminatory treatment between students that are in district or out of district, because that's not true at all. But out of district students do face certain barriers that in district students don't face. And I would just like for that to be explicitly addressed. But maybe I'm wrong in saying that. So perhaps to prove it, we could take a look at student outcomes in comparison to students that are in district. And if there is a disparity there, then perhaps that's sort of where that goal comes in mind. Of like,
so David, can you cite an example? You're saying there are disparities where out of district students get different treatment than in district students?
No, that's not what I'm saying there. I'm saying that that's not true at all. I'm just saying that in-district students and out-of-district students have inherently different barriers, and I would like those certain barriers to be addressed. So, for example, out-of-district students obviously have to travel further than in-district students. Out-of-district students may typically come from lower income communities than in-district students. Just taking a look at those sorts of barriers.
Okay.
Okay. After David comes John, and then after John will be Sandra.
Okay, excuse me, I've just got something in my throat. So if you want to take somebody else while I get a drink of water,
Yeah.
I'll follow up.
Sandra, you're up next, and then John will follow you.
Okay, great. I had some questions about this as well, because from my understanding, PCC actually have more out-of-district students than we do in-district students. And I recall that's been some of a criticism that I've heard over the years, that PCC serve more out-of-district students than in-district students. And I think what would be helpful would be data presented in the technology master plan. There was data on in-district students that does show that students are from lower income brackets, that they do face financial challenges. And it also broke down, I believe there was another data link that broke down the number of students from each of our 7 districts. So for example, from La Cañada, which is my district, there's only about 260 students from La Cañada that goes to PCC. So I'm wondering if this is something that can be addressed, David, through more data. And so when we see more data, then I think it will help dispel maybe some of the discrepancies that's out there.
Thank you, Sandra. John, you're up.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to start with the goal as a whole first, and then swing back into this particular subpart of it. To me, student success is probably the most important goal on the page. And even though it would primarily only be symbolic, would appreciate it being our first goal whenever the final order is established. To me, this is the most important goal. We're an academic institution. It's why we're here. And I appreciate the committee including it. In that context, I think this is the heart of what most people want, have appreciated in the past, look forward and need from PCC. And it manifests itself in many, many ways that I think that are obviously more administrative, but where the rubber meets the road. When we came up with our programs for assuring that students had classes, that was a huge part of student success. Because overall, I hear across my district, people want classes that they need. Our emphasis on workforce right now and able to put people in the right jobs is a huge part of student success right now, and the primary thing this institution can be focused on at a critical time. The right number of class offerings, the specifics of those class offerings, making sure the locations of those class offerings are located where students can get to them more easily to meet their needs and meet success. The selection from each of the deans working their way through, and I know our former vice president did a brilliant job on those class offerings, and I have a lot of confidence in our new vice president in this area as well. To me, this is the heart of what I want to see for our board goals for PCC. When it comes specifically to the topic of out-of-district students, I'm going to start with my basic philosophy, and that is that my goal as a trustee is that whatever student comes to us, I want to make sure that they find success. I'm not asking exactly where they came from. I'm not asking if they're a citizen. There's many things I'm not asking, but what I am asking is I want to know that we're reaching them and accomplishing what they came to PCC to accomplish. To specifically, and I have always viewed that the fact that so many out-of-district students come to PCC is both a function of, one, the way our district geographically was drawn, leaving out a swath of geography that's pretty close to PCC, but not in our district, that should have probably been in our district. But more importantly, it's a testimony and a badge of honor for how well PCC has done and the many programs that we have and what we are doing for our students. So it's a badge of honor. It's one I've been proud of. I'm not ashamed that we have more out-of-district students. I think it's wonderful. Now, to ask me as an elected trustee who very soon is going to be going to my voters and asking them to increase their property taxes, which if they're not paying property taxes will have some impact on their rents, to help fund a better college that the out-of-district population is not paying for, and then to throw down a board goal that says out-of-district students get some kind of special attention, and I use the word special attention only because they are listed here and our in-district students are not. That's something I fundamentally can't support. I love our out-of-district students. I'm neutral on wherever a student comes from, but don't ask me to put in writing some special attention for out-of-district students. I just can't accept that as an elected trustee of this area. And I appreciate everyone listening to those long comments.
John, thank you. I'm next. And if anybody else, I see Sandra. I'm going to go next, and then Sandra, you'll come after me. John, I agree with everything that you just said. First of all, student success should be our goal, and it should be goal number one. I agree with that. Now, as we drill down, we have two metrics. One is listed here. One is ensure the needs are out of district, and the second is that the board interact with students. And with all due respect to everybody here on the screen, the key to student success is not the board interacting with students. There's a whole bunch of other things that lead up to that. So I support the goal, and I won't repeat everything that John said about in-district versus out-of-district because I agree with everything that he said. Love having the out-of-district students. It's a credit to PCC. But when we look at this goal, to only call attention to our out-of-district students as a metric, and then the other metric being is the board interacting with students. I think we need to work on the metrics. And you know, guys, the metrics are there. We know what the metrics are. Are we graduating students and moving them on to 4 years? Are we graduating students with work certificates and moving them into the workforce in jobs where they got their certificates? So love the goal. I think we just need to work more on the metrics that show we're achieving that goal.
Well, if I may,
Yeah,
Trustee
Helen, go ahead.
Osterling, just looking at your list of accomplishments, of things of which you were most proud, several of you mentioned the same one about the transition to virtual. So it seems logical to me that under student success, you would have something about after this pandemic situation ends and how you're going to do the reverse then. Or maybe not, maybe you won't do the reverse. Maybe you'll do part of what you've done. Maybe you'll keep some things, but how are you going to make that transition? How are you as a board going to know or ensure that the transition back to whatever the new normal will be appropriate, effective, or whatever, to ensure the success of students once this other change is made? It seems that should maybe be based on your reflections today.
Well, certainly, that's the direction that I was thinking, is that student success is so broad, and we're looking at this as an annual goal, right? Because student success can take up multiple years to achieve. And so if we're to look at this goal as student success, it could be student success in the coming year. And what does that mean? You know, it could mean increasing headcount. You know, it could mean that more sectionals or more degrees offered, or, I mean, those could be the outcome for student success for this coming year. In terms of the metrics for out of school district students and for student interactions with the board, I feel like that's almost around student engagement, you know, and student engagement may be a little bit different than how we define student success. So those are just my comments that when I looked at the, and I may be going ahead of myself, is that when we're looking at partnerships, you know, we're seeing K-12 partnerships, and then there's also partnerships with nonprofits and all that. I mean, part of that partnership is, you know, are we having partnerships with our student body? Are we having partnerships with our faculty? So I think this area is if we can filter it down, to me, it's two separate things. It's student success in this coming year, and then it's student engagement.
Okay, if it's okay, I'd like to go 3 and come back, because I think we might get at some of this more, unless, of course, Erica, I'm sure you have something to say here.
Well, I think it's related to my first comment, and that was that I think focusing on, it's very unclear how to set a metric on focusing on out of area students, because basically then it is about us. Like, we can't go into other service areas and provide service. So all we can do is make sure that when students come to our campus, that they get the services they need. But that would be true of any student. That would be true of our in-district as well as our out-of-district students. So I think the idea of refining this around what is student success, and then ensuring that there's student engagement in general, because that's part of student success, making sure that the students are engaged on campus. You know, when you look at the next page where we talk about monitor student success in established programs, such as the College Promise.
Right. I think we're going to get to some more
Yeah.
of the, student success
Yeah,
issues.
so
That's why I want to
think
come
there's-
back.
Yeah, so I think there's more concrete things later on
Mhm.
that probably would fill this in rather than especially that first one, because it's nebulous.
Let me,
So I do want to
let me
say one
take
thing
one
before we
more
move
hand
on,
before
Dr.
we
Benjamin.
move on.
I'd like to say one thing before we
Yeah,
move on.
let
So,
me, yeah, go ahead, Linda.
if you read the board goal, just the goal, I mean, it talks about success, access, but I think it also addresses giving voice and giving opportunities. And I think that's what 2.1 was, that when it got brought to us, that was sort of the attention. So I think that we could certainly reword that a bit, because it really is about giving voice to all of our students. But it did seem like there was a feeling that out of district students maybe felt like they didn't have a voice. So maybe that is something that we can rework the wording, and maybe it will come up as we discuss the rest of the goals.
Yeah, I think you've got some student success in some of these others. So let's just put a pin right there if it's okay.
Yeah.
And you can be thinking about that, and we can move to the next one, because we're going to have something when we leave here by the time we get to 6 o'clock. Okay, we do have one more. And this one is 2.3, still in this category. Monitor student access and success in established programs, such as College Promise, as an example, and receive reports on ways to increase credit for prior learning opportunities. That's actually two things. So the superintendent president then would work with the board to determine the programs on which to focus and develop a plan to meet the actions set forth. So John, does that sound more like what you're thinking, Trustee Martin? I mean,
John's fine. And I would say that that's a part of it,
Okay.
very much a part of it. And these are things the college is currently doing and doing really well. So I don't want these comments to come over, but carefully monitoring the students are getting courses, that the course sequencing is working like our Pathways program to get them through. The way this goal is supporting our EMP, where we're talking about trying to get students through with less units in total as a more efficiency to get them where they want to go. So yes, those specifics are part of that, but I think there's many, many other parts to that equation that I think are also important. So, but I appreciate you asking.
yes, and you have to, as Trustee Lau said, it's 1 year. These are your goals for 1 year, and you can't do everything in 1 year. So what do you want to focus on in this year? And then the metric for that would be, once the specific programs are determined, the ones you want to monitor as a board, you will receive reports at the end of the established monitoring period on student success and success in identified programs. Because this one says, because you're going to choose certain programs that you want. So that would be the metric.
This is good.
And then 2.4, you say you want to strive for excellence and success and completion of goals for all our students to elevate them to achieve their goals. I just wrote where you had it. Identify, superintendent president will, to trustees, ways to recognize and encourage teaching and service excellence in every division. How do you feel about that one?
Sandra, your hand is up. You are next.
So here's what I would like to get your feedback on, Dr. Benjamin, is that when we talk about student success, do we have a common definition as a board on what defines as student success?
I think you guys are using, and your superintendent president can talk about this more than I can, but you're using the vision for success goals. Is that not correct? I think that's what you have in your EMP.
Yes,
Okay.
you're using the vision for success goals.
Okay,
Right.
so those goals are already in some ways pretty aggressive and proactive goals. And again, going back to where we are. So if we were to look at strive for excellence and success of completion of goals, to me, that's somewhat vague. I mean, what does excellence mean? What does that entail? And how do we measure excellence? So I think if there's another way, or if there are ways to extract impact and use the impact as the metrics, to me that will be more helpful for me
Yeah.
to.
I think instead of creating a new one here, we could just put, well, unless you want to reward those departments. Yeah, but you could just, because you're monitoring through Vision for Success anyway, you could just say monitor student success using the Vision for Success. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay,
Does that make
Berlinda's
sense?
hand is up, and then after that, Tammy.
My question is back on 2.4, strive for excellence. I have a question for Dr. Andrew Jonas. Is this goal something that actually you can achieve? Because it says here, identify to trustees to recognize and encourage teaching, service, excellence in every division. Is this something that you are able to do? Are we going too forward? Could you talk about this so we will know if we're going out of line? And we don't want to give you more than you deserve. Not deserve, but abuse. We don't want to take advantage of the situation.
My question to all of you is, as I read that, basically what it says is that you want to set up trustee awards every year for each division on the campus, and that you want to entertain nominations for individuals or programs that are considered excellent, and you want to bestow an award. That's how I read that. So,
and part of that is my interpretation, so they need to let you know whether that's what they meant.
I don't know. That's how I read it, is that you want to give out awards.
Yes.
That's the reason I asked the question, because that was not what we had in mind.
Okay.
And I think we need to know what is it that we're asking you, so you can know what is it we want. Linda or whoever.
Yeah, so just to clarify this, so this came up, it was recommended because John talks a lot about how we need to make academic excellence sort of our, the focal point of what we're doing. So that's how this goal came about. And we also asked the same question, well, how do you measure that? And how will we know whether or not we've achieved it? So one of the things that also did come up in this discussion was, we know that by division, some divisions are really doing well, and certainly there would be a great, opportunity for the president to highlight that even in our board reports. Here's some divisions. Here's where some success has really been outstanding. So we know by divisions, and if we know maybe there are divisions maybe that need additional resources, that would also be helpful for us. So those are some of the things that we discussed when we talked about this goal.
Tammy, I haven't forgotten about you. You're next.
Yes, when we talked about this, it was more in the sense of just always creating a culture of excellence, 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 underlining it 3 times. And so that good teaching or good student service would be lauded frequently, and that it would just be, we thought maybe a rolling stone of continual appreciation, recognition of excellence, so that it isn't at all trustees giving, but that departments recognize good teaching, and maybe that would come based in part from student surveys of faculty, maybe for student services in part, but we just wanted a really positive, no?
Well, I gotta tell you that what you're talking about would require a significant amount of work on my part. I mean, my folks do their board reports. I report out to you every single month. I tell you about this, the forensics team won speech contest, the athletics team did this. And so I report out on all of those things, but if there are two issues. Number one, how to manage getting like those kinds of recognitions for every single meeting. But the other problem that you run into is then you have well, how come you only talked about this department, but you didn't talk about this department? Or why does Dr. Olivo's programs always get attention and this person doesn't get attention? So I hear what you're saying, and I hear what you're saying, and it's a huge hill to climb for it to be so ongoing that I'm going to be able to bring something to, a collection of departments to you every single month. And I'm going to be able to, that it concerns me. I just don't think
Yeah,
I
the
can.
one way that this has been done is internally through a nomination process. You have certain criteria, you open it up to the whole college.
Right, we do it, and we're doing that right now. We're doing the Above and Beyond Awards. We have 6 awards that we do, and it's open to anybody in the college. It's classified administrators, faculty, and then there are the RISER awards. Like, we have those internal awards, and I brought the Above and Beyond Awards with me as an idea. We did it last year. We're doing it again this year, and focusing, of course, on COVID. So we have an internal process for doing this.
And I think that this one they're asking, for in terms of metrics though, and actual success and that's I think what you were answering, but it would be on which departments whose students are making the most gains based on a certain set of criteria.
No, that wasn't what created this, actually. And maybe we don't even need this, but we would just want excellence in everything we do to be at the forefront of our mind. So that's how 2.4, and it really was about awards. So we don't need to have it, but we just need to not forget that that should be front and center.
Berlinda, your hand is up, and after Berlinda comes John.
Well, yeah, so that's how that came up. And I thought we were going to litter out of our turf because we cannot control what happens in the classroom. And when we talk about awards and all that, that's why I asked Dr. Andujonis. So I just wanted to clarify that because I don't think that's in our purview personally. Okay.
So I want to make sure I'm hearing, so do you want to take this out, leave it in, too difficult?
We could take it out and maybe rework the wording of board goal number 2 so that.
Well, we have to have this done today, so.
Okay.
So take it out.
And we can do a modification and bring them to your board meeting because you'll need to approve these. I think you'd want to at least come to consensus in public so people can see them and have them on the agenda. So we can make some changes to these based on what you decide today.
Oh, Erica, let me ask you. So this has been brought up even by some of the students that some divisions do seem to be much more student centered than others, or maybe, I don't know, it's maybe some divisions make greater gains in student success than others. Is that something that we should or could monitor?
When you say divisions, what are you talking about? Like, give me specific examples of where students have said this division is better than this division. I need an example. So
for example, I know when I sat in on one of the statewide committees, maybe it was on the metrics committee, and it came up that that we knew that there were some professors maybe who were doing helping students more. There was better success, especially in with our underrepresented students. Maybe we could see that there was more success or gains with certain professors, and so then, rather than calling out professors, maybe it's by divisions. Is that something that we could look at?
Well, we can certainly look at it, but I think it's a question of, you have to define, when you say excellence, what does that mean? Does it mean X percentage of student, like they've got the highest completion rate of any other division? Does it mean, like, that's what we have to do, is we'd have to define it, because then I would have to apply that to the criteria, you know, to the data, because otherwise I will tell you, it would be easy for people to say that divisions never get recognized in front of the board unless they're my pet favorite.
So what if we put something like explore? So in this year,
Yeah,
you
we
would
explore.
look at how you can do it.
So Jim,
Yeah,
Does that,
let me just interject here. I'm gonna try, this is a lively debate and I like that, but I'm gonna try to do the best I can to maintain order. And John is next, and after John is Tony. So John, go ahead.
thank you. So I'm just going to say it directly. I think we need to remove 2.4 instead of trying to contort it into something. You know, no matter what you do, somebody's going to always say, oh, they have a recognition, they don't. The college has done an exceptional job in this area. Kudos to the committee for putting this on here. I think it was wise for the committee to maybe give us a little more on the cafeteria than we should probably be eating, and let us kind of pick and choose from it. So I think in some ways, the fact that we may end up removing a couple things to focus a little more on others is complimentary to the committee. And again, my appreciation to the committee for hearing things that I've been saying in the meeting. I want to thank you three in particular. At the risk of sounding like that broken record, back to 2.3 and back to the heart of what I think student success is, if we have these vision for success goals, and many of those are very quantifiable with very specific numbers. And to be honest, there are some headwinds facing PCC to reach those numbers. We know there's demographic challenges for students of the traditional age coming into the community college system. We know COVID has obviously made it more difficult for many students, and in particular, some of the students we're trying to reach out to the most, to be able to get to classes. And so for this year, to focus back on 2.3 and to just be as direct to say that is a board goal to support the college on their vision for success goals, and listen to the college and the administration on what we can do to make these numbers in what might be some headwinds. To me, that would be the pinnacle of our board goals.
Thank you, John. Next is Tony.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to mention, I think we've taken care of 2.4. I'm not in favor of that. And Berlinda mentioned moving out of our turf, and I get very nervous as a professor when I see things like recognizing excellence. It's good to have an award, but these are done in departments. These are done by the academic senate. And I just am not into invading that kind of turf. And excellence in teaching, it takes place in the departments. This is why we have tenure procedures, and the teachers who can't move up to that excellence are usually removed. And that's why I kind of call for more teacher evaluations, yearly evaluations, but all these years. But that's my 2 cents. I just, and I really want Erica to be vocal if we move into those areas, because as a professor, I am very, very strong that boards do not move into my area of teaching. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. No hands up in the participant window right now. I agree with Tony and Berlinda that we don't need the trustees handing out awards. And I think the college does a pretty good job of having awards in place for student service, for academic, and so on. And I agree that that's their purview, not ours.
so is it the consensus that you want to remove this one? and maybe replace it with monitoring student success using the Vision for Success framework?
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I would agree with that.
Okay.
How's everybody else feel?
Yes.
Okay. All right, good. Helen, thank you for moving us towards a consensus there.
Hey,
Yeah.
you're welcome. And I can fill in, I'll fill in the rest of it. So let's go to the partnership section. So this one, I had the question in italics there, and the metrics is mine. It says, meet at least annually with each area K-12 board to improve communication to our communities of resources offered and provide smooth transitions. And all of this is in order to provide smooth transitions for high school students. And the president's job in here would be to plan these meetings on behalf of the board. The metric would be, and I didn't know how many, I wasn't sure how many school districts you had, because I just started thinking, boy, this could be a nightmare. I remember my old job. But anyway, the board will meet with at least whatever number annually is what I put as the metric. And
Okay.
someone wrote an email telling me that you had 8 districts.
Yeah, we have 8.
See how you could meet with 8 boards in 12 months.
Yeah, and our first hand up on this one is Sandra, and yeah, that is a daunting task, and to do that in the Brown Act format. Sandra, you're up.
Great, thank you. This board goal, from my understanding, may have evolved from the last round of board goals on community engagement. And I think that we had at one point talked about, a community engagement plan, in the way, how does PCC work with our community partners? And again, what are the outcomes, of these partnerships? Certainly there is a lot of activities that even during the pandemic, that Dr. Androdanis have participated in, along with Alex Buckelheid. At the same time, we would like to see what is the impact of these community engagements. For example, when we had the facilities master plan, there were some concerns from our neighbors. What was certainly there was action taken to work with the neighbors. So as we think about some of the needs that are coming up this year, in particular with our facilities bond, what then would be the board's goal in working with communities that will drive or that will positively impact our facilities bond? And certainly there's also these, dual enrollment education opportunities with K through 12. So in a sense, when I see partnerships, what I'm seeing is community engagement.
Okay, I don't see any other hands up on this subject, so I'll chime in here. I agree with Sandra. I think our administration, Erica can chime in on this, already has a substantial outreach to our 8 K-12 high schools. And I think that's the appropriate level where that outreach and interchange takes place. And I think that's already in place. And I think it might be above and beyond our job description for us to be running around and meeting with all these K-12 boards. It's good for us to have relationships with them, but I think whether it's intended to be covered here or not, I think though our job is to do outreach to the community because we represent the community. We're elected by the community. And Sandra's point that we're hopefully going to have a bond issuance coming up soon. I think we need to focus on community outreach in this upcoming fiscal year extensively, ultimately leading up to a bond a ballot measure for bonds. I think that's the community outreach in this upcoming fiscal year that we need to be engaged in, and where us board members as representatives of the community in the community, that's something that we can do where we're effective. I see 2 hands up, and we're going to go for Linda. I see 3 hands up. Here's the order we're going to go here. For Linda, and then Tony. So for
Okay.
Linda, you're up.
So my view, 3.1, meeting with the different boards. I think that is very important. It doesn't have to be every month or every once a year, but that's as needed. But it is important for us to keep a good rapport with the board members. I know that when I first came on the board, we used to have a meeting every year, a joint meeting with PUSD. Then we started having meetings out in different areas. I think we were in Arcadia and what have you. And one perfect example of good meeting with boards, I think, is how Rosemead came to fruition. I think we did meet with that board, if I'm not mistaken. So it is good for us to have a good rapport with the board members. Actually, the board members of different schools are you can call them community members, because they bring with them all their constituents. So that is definitely good. So I think we're on 3.1. So I would stick to 3.1. But I do believe we should meet. How often? That's to be determined as needed. But we must keep them in the pipeline.
Thank you for Linda. Linda, you're up.
Yeah, I also think that this is important for us to do. When I started on the board, we were meeting with PUSD, and then as Brenda said, we started to recognize that, yes, we do serve more than Pasadena. So we started to meet with other districts. And I think actually one of our highest attended joint meetings was in South Pasadena, where the entire community came out, and I got great feedback from the community and how appreciative they were. I think it is important for us to build that relationship with our K-12 board colleagues. And now we are seeing legislation that is connected. For example, in the ethnic studies, the K-12s have been trying to push for ethnic studies. Now we in community college have a bill out under Assemblymember Marsucci that is going to connect us in ethnic studies to align us with what the CSUs are doing, and then could help with the K-12 push for ethnic studies. So I think that there is, I think, positive benefit for us to collaborate. And I think now that we have established these virtual meeting mechanisms, I think it will be easier rather than us having to haul all our equipment over physically to a district. I think we could do it virtually. I also agree that annually for every district would be difficult. And I think at the time we were doing this, we maybe did 2 districts or 3 districts a year. And I think 2 districts, I think, is doable.
Thank you, Linda. And Tony, you're up next.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, I know we've done a great job in the past. In pre-COVID days, we've had the yearly luncheons with high school principals. And I think and board members came and sat at all separate tables with them. And I thought that was very effective. And I think it's incumbent on each trustee to meet with the board of trustees. I don't think the whole board has to meet in each district, but we should all be giving reports once a year to the high school boards, especially. Thank you.
Okay, there's no other hands up in the participant window. What do we want to do to finalize 3.1?
I would like to keep it. I think it could have been helpful in our dealings with El Monte if we knew each other as people. I think it's always good.
Absolutely.
Okay, so right now it says meet at least annually with each area K-12 board. We have 8 high school districts that feed into PCC. And if we were to meet annually with each one of those as part of the format of our regular meetings. That's a lot of meetings. If we're going to meet with them annually, I think it needs to be somehow some other format than our, our regular board meeting turning into a joint board meeting. I don't think we'll be able to do that. I agree that we need to maintain relationships with our K-12 boards in our district.
If we change that to periodically instead of annually.
Yeah.
Good words, good word. That's a good
Yeah.
one.
Okay, does that mean because you got to give clear direction to your CEO. Does that mean you want her to try to schedule just one in this period that you're planning for?
Do 4? Can we do half and half to begin with?
No.
I don't see how you could do that many. Because look
Yeah,
how
4 is too
people
many.
are on those boards, all those schedules. I have done this. It is close to impossible to do. You couldn't do you'd never get them scheduled.
Should we
I
ask?
would suggest that we let the board chair and officers work with the superintendent to be strategic on this, because there are times and places where it might be a good time to meet with a certain board, more or less, some year over another. Things to celebrate, like opening Muir campus and things we could do together. And rather than trying to, quantify it now just based on a random number of this many boards a year, I think it's a direction we want. I think we all express that. And now when it comes to the details, let the officers and the superintendents think about what would be the appropriate. And there might be a case where one year, because of things the way they're happening, we want to get more than a certain number in. So let the details drive that decision.
Again, can I say that
If I change 3.1 to plan to engage formally with local school districts periodically.
Yeah.
Good.
Tony.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jim, can I just underscore that each trustee should really probably be meeting with your high school boards once a year just to give a report. There's nothing, the whole board doesn't have to be there, and they don't really have time. So I would encourage that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Tony. I think we need to figure out a format, and it's not a joint board meeting where they have to hear our whole agenda and vice versa. It's something like Tony described, where we stay in touch, but it's not a joint meeting because it's really tough to do that many joint meetings.
So the way I have it worded here, I think can work. I'm going to put one more thing in here to get at Trustee Anthony. I can't think of your fellows. So plan to engage formally with individual local student district trustees or full board, and that just covers, would that cover it? Gives you enough latitude?
I think Tony's point was that as individual trustees, we should be reporting out to our districts that we represent. Right, Tony? Is that what you're referring to?
Yes,
it should be planned to engage individually or as a board. Okay, never mind. It's good. It's good.
I have a problem with that.
Linda, you're up. Go ahead.
I will go back to say that we should. It may not be a joint meeting, but being one trustee engaging with a board is not very effective if you have a relationship. I remember when well, doesn't matter. I think it's good for us to engage as a board. Be it, I think what we had those meetings with the luncheons, I think it was, where we had board members and principals. But I really like the idea of the board meeting with the board, because when things come down, political things, it does help having a relationship. It really does. I mean, I still remember the meeting we had in Rosemead, and I'm telling you, it works. But it doesn't have to be every year. That should be up to, but if we don't have a pattern, then they'll say, here they come, they want something. So there's got to be a pattern. There's got to be something. That's my 2 cents.
Are we all happy with 3.1 as rewritten on the screen?
Yeah.
Okay. Helen, thank you again for incorporating all of that different input and putting it down into a succinct goal. I'm going to take a very brief break and we can keep going. I'll be right back.
Well, let's take a 5-minute break,
All right,
Trustee Osterling.
Okay,
for
thank you.
everybody.
5-minute break. So it's 3:35. We'll reconvene at 3:40.
Sounds good.
What I heard is that they call it the bio break. Biology break.
I'm going to get a piece of chocolate.
Yeah, that sounds good. You're moving us along, Helen.
I'm trying.
I'm so glad that we have a facilitator, because we've been working on these goals. I mean, not we, but, certainly the goals have been discussed for a long time. I would say almost 18 months,
Wow.
And actually the 2021 goals have now transitioned into 21-22 goals, because we couldn't.
Well, we're too late. You're too far along.
Right.
In the current year.
Right. And so it's good that we can have some framework in how we can get this. And I like your goal of getting our goals done. And even though it says at 4, it looks like we're gonna need to go a little bit beyond 4, don't you think? We still have like two or three.
Well, you guys have other stuff on your agenda though. That's the thing. But
yeah, but I think the other things I'm not convinced that we need a full 2 hours for. And I think the other thing could actually be done in an hour. I'm not convinced that it needs.
Okay, so I'll try to go an hour. I'll try to go to 4:30.
Yeah.
Yeah, because these have to get done.
Yes. So what I'm thinking, Trustee Osterling and Erica, is that if you get enough here, then I can meet again with the ad hoc committee. We can refine these. And then when is your next board meeting?
April 21.
Yeah, and they can be on the agenda for you to review and approve.
Agreed. And
if we get enough today, we can do that.
Yeah, and Erica's right. The other agenda items will take less time. And we had some formalities before you got started. So the bottom line is we can certainly go past 4 o'clock and we'll still be fine. We'll still be on schedule.
Okay.
Got to finish this stuff.
Yeah, I have a question. This idea intrigues me. I like those superintendent lunches we have.
I love it.
Yeah, Erica, what if we had a meeting with trying to avoid Brown Act violations? What if we would set up periodic meetings with our officers, so that's 3 or less, and our superintendent with officers and superintendents of our K-12s, and then we aren't violating Brown Act, and we're doing outreach, and we're bringing our superintendents along as well.
Yeah, I guess we could do that.
See, this gives you some real latitude. You could come up with some really creative ideas. You could invite them to campus events and have them come 30 minutes early and have a little social hour and talk to them before
I'd be happy to just have the same kind of a thing for boards, K-12 boards that we have for superintendents, but I don't know if that's a Brown Act violation.
Well, I think that there's some sensitivity to that because, when I did an event on reopening of schools and I had 3 districts, and out of the 3 districts, all of them had more than 3 or 4 board members attending, and one of them was worried that that they were violating the Brown Act, but the Brown Act does say that if it's for the public, if it's a public event, that there's no actions taken, you can have board members at the event.
Yeah. Yeah, like, our statewide trustee meetings and so forth. Erica, I think we should give that some thought, because the idea of maintaining closer contact with our K-12s is a good idea. It's just really hard to do it in those formal joint board meetings. It's hard to do many of those per year.
Okay.
Okay. So it's 3:40. Let's reconvene and keep going. And we're moving on to 3.2, right, Helen?
Yes, and
Okay.
I wrote a little description there for goal 3. I changed it to, because I heard you talking about your bonds, partnerships and community outreach as the category, and engage. And the description is to engage with K-12 business and industry, and higher education and local entities to ensure success of PCC students and the college at large. So that's the description of what we're doing right now. So the second action you'll take is that you'll review progress, completion, success data on K-12 students participating in PCC academic programs. And the ad hoc committee can comment on this. I think this had to do with dual enrollment more than anything else. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good.
Is that okay? That one okay with everybody?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Madam-
since you all
Madam
want
President?
CTE programs in dual enrollment, this only says academic programs.
Oh,
So I just made it generic. Should we change the wording? Should we say
I
dual
think you
enrollment?
say academic and CTE programs.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you.
good eye there, Dr.
Hey, and Erica, side note on that. Isn't there one student up at PCC Northwest at Muir that has earned her degree from PCC through dual enrollment?
Mhm.
And
Yep.
I think she's 16. Am I right about that?
I think so.
Yeah.
Off the top of my head, I don't remember the exact, but I think it is that.
Yeah.
Okay, Trustee Osterling, would you share with everybody that we just decided to go to 4:30 on this?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to go till 4:30 on goals, and we're still going to be on schedule because the remaining agenda items will not take us an hour and a half beyond that.
Okay,
Yeah.
so 3.3, strengthen and develop relationships with, I guess, the city and nonprofit organizations to ensure more opportunities for internships, scholarships, et cetera.
Excellent.
Love it. Sandra, your hand is up. You're up.
Yes. So from my understanding as a trustee, one of our responsibilities is to be that liaison between communities and also also PCC. I agree in principle that we certainly need to strengthen and develop relationships with city and nonprofit organizations, etc. At the same time, I also feel like that's a responsibility of the Freeman Center, and that they have been doing that. So I would like to ask Erica, what would you like the trustees to do in this space? Because I do think that your team, and along with the PCC Foundation, are working on scholarships, and the Freeman Center is working on internships. What would you like to see from us to help propel that or to help strengthen that?
Well, I think if you have connections out there in the community and somebody says that they want to provide internships for PCC, you tell me,
Right.
and I connect, and we get them connected to the Freeman Center. So, and the Business Council, the foundation, does the same thing. And so I think it's really about you all looking at your business and nonprofit and city contacts and making that connection kind of in a soft handoff sort of way. And then we make sure that those things get followed up on.
And I had a question in here in the metric. I said that the number of internships, scholarships, and other opportunities for students increase as a result of the board's efforts. But if that's going to be the metric, you're going to need a baseline so that you know where you are before the board starts whatever its efforts will be.
Right.
And what increases are attributable to the board's action.
I would suggest that we not worry too much about trying to directly tie those things that happen as a result of the board's efforts or not. I think that's a good idea, but you know, can be hard to know for sure what things resulted from board effort versus foundation versus Freeman Center, et cetera. So I suggest that we not worry about trying to tie this back to board effort.
Okay.
And then on 3.3, I would only add one word after internships and before scholarships, and that's career opportunities, job placement.
Okay.
Well, can I ask if the board, if there's no connection to anything the board is doing, then why is this a board goal?
Well, isn't it like student success is a board goal, but we're not going to be teaching the classes, you know?
Right, but if you look at the tasks for the CEO, it says provide list of partnerships and work with board to develop other opportunities. So I'm just trying to understand if it's
Is it creating more work for you to work for? I think.
Well, I'm just trying to get clarity here on exactly what I'm expecting.
It seems that they have connections with the public. And in their connecting with the public, they will be looking for in conversations and whatever. And I think you described it when you said there would be a soft handoff to you. They would let you know these things as they make these connections. They would provide you leads. So maybe we should say here by providing leads.
Berlinda, your hand is up.
When I interjected that statement, I did not just think about the board, but I thought about things that I have seen in the past where, like our previous superintendents, would go out in the community and meet with the different mayor and, so that's where I was going. And because of the intertwined, because of the relationship that the CEO as a college rep and whomever others, I know that the transfer center and different people reaches out. So that is how we get additional opportunities for our students. I remember Raj went to every city council. I'm not saying this is what we want our president to do, but that was his approach. We developed all type of meetings to host and bring different people in. Our foundation is doing that, different people, but our CEO also plays a role in that. So that is where my brain was going.
Okay, but these are your goals. I can see that in her goals, but in this developing partnerships, career opportunities, and internships, what do you want to do as a board? That's what this one is.
Yep.
I like this to remind us to always be thinking of PCC when you're meeting somebody. Oh, hey, I just read the Arroyo Foothill Conservancy had students that went out to do research on our local wildlife. And I had just thought, I wonder if any of there was something that connected PCC in my mind, and I didn't say anything. So now I'm thinking I should go back and ask that foundation, what was it again you needed? And then I would just, I guess, email you, Erica, that, oh, this foundation is using, okay. So.
Yep.
So what
Linda,
if we change it to apprise the superintendent president of opportunities for internships, well, I'll do some with the wording, opportunities and scholarships for students.
Right.
Yeah.
And so
Is-
nothing for Erica to do. We would just inform her and.
Linda, your hand is up next.
Yeah, so I like this goal. I do think it is the responsibility of the trustees to always be looking for opportunities to connect our students and our communities with what PCC can offer, and vice versa, to make sure that PCC is offering resources that really make sense for our students and our communities. So I just have 2 internship opportunities and scholarship opportunities that I'm forwarding over to the Freeman Center. And I think it would be helpful for us to have this list, because I think sometimes we've talked about this in the API community group, is sometimes we have scholarships that get sent to us, but we don't really see PCC students applying. And so, and same thing with internships and job opportunities. I think it would be helpful for the trustees to then know, are the connections we're making, are they fruitful? Are they, is it productive? Should we have other kinds of connections or look for other kinds of connections to network PCC? So I do think it would be helpful for us to look at this and to have some sort of an outcomes list.
All right, so the board apprises, the CEO receives the information from the board and follows up on the recommendations, and she also provides the board with areas requiring such assistance, like, just nursing or whatever, so you'll have some sense of where it needs to go.
Yeah.
Okay. Are we all good with number 3, and are we ready to move on to number 4?
Let's hope so.
All right, let's go. Okay.
All right, this one's workforce development, and this goal focuses on the equity gap. So the first one, I think we'll probably have some discussion here. Monitor and review workforce in at least 3 key areas: wage gains, social mobility, and internships. And then the CEO's role is to provide reports regularly to keep the board apprised of progress. And then reports are provided to the board. And I just have a note in here about, and you guys Erica can address this, the feasibility of obtaining these data. This may be challenging. I don't know. I know wage gains.
Yeah, wage gains.
Erica, you're up.
Wage gains and internships, we can try to figure that out, but social mobility is a longitudinal metric. It is not, social mobility is you signed up to take classes, you completed a degree, you got a job, and you were able to move into a nicer apartment, and then you were able to do all these things, or you went to a 4-year and then you got this kind of job for your first job, and then you had social mobility. That's an impossible metric, especially because so many of our students are from outside of our service area. That's basically making you, and by extension me, responsible for social mobility in the entire county of Los Angeles. And there's just no metric on the planet that, so I really, the social mobility is not feasible. And I can't, I will never be able to give you meaningful information on that.
Yeah, I agree, Erica. It's a great goal. It's really what the whole goal of the community college system is, but it's so hard to track that longitudinal.
It is education. Education is social mobility. So anybody being at our college is by definition.
Yeah, but tracking that longitudinal data. So Linda next, and then after that will be Tammy. Linda, go ahead.
Yeah, so I know that right now we are not collecting that longitudinal data. Hopefully that will change soon with some upcoming bills. Longitude, so social mobility index is also already available, but I know we don't create it at the community college level. Somebody else does. So, I don't really care that we are the ones who are creating it, but somewhere it does seem like it is available. I mean, Glendale got listed as one of the highest community college for social mobility.
Right, but that was a unique set of information, and that we have no way to monitor it, and it's unrealistic. It's longitudinal data. It's not year over year over year. I really,
Yeah.
I don't think it's reasonable to ask yourselves to hold yourself accountable, and then by extension to hold me accountable for increasing social mobility. There are so many factors that play a role that I have no control over. I have control over people taking classes, people doing training that leads to jobs, people doing classes that get them to a four-year institution. Once they leave here, I have no control over what happens with their family, over what happens with their finances. Could they buy a house? None of that. That's social mobility. I can't be held accountable to something I can't control.
So it's not that you're being held accountable, it's just that are we tracking it? So maybe there's another index then that we look at. So I think that, to me, social mobility is sort of the outcome of education. If our students are well educated, they're going to get better jobs. That's the expectation.
Well, that's called wage gains.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right.
Have it in terms of economic mobility. I've seen that in economic equity, and I guess social equity, but it's hard. I'd be curious to see what Glendale, how they did that.
Well, I don't think it was Glendale themselves.
Organization that did that.
Yeah, it's another organization who did it through the labor data, and they So I don't want to hold us responsible for collecting data that we don't really have any control of. But if there are, but certainly, I'd like to know, are the CTE offerings that we have, are they leading that to better jobs for our students? Are they in the key industries?
That's in the launch board data.
Say it again.
That's in the launch board data, and that's in our CTE outcome data that you get up, that you had a presentation on. I think it was in November or December.
Okay, so let's identify those key areas and then let's start monitoring this.
Okay. And Tammy, you're up next.
Oh, I just want to say that in one of our early board goals meetings, Crystal Colross spoke to us about the debacle, which is the EDD. And yes, the EDD is responsible for collecting that data and disseminating it to the community colleges. And they're not, I mean, talk about an organization that needs some help. They're not doing it. They're not. And the other problem that Erica has mentioned is they're only collecting data from employers, and all the musicians and the artists and delivery. Okay, that we're not excited about delivery jobs. We want better for our students, but people that are working freelance, that data is not collected at all. So we have a different kind of economy from what we grew up, where people marched into a proper job. And so this collection of data that we would love to have is not, we can't get it.
But there is some data, and we do and we can continue to provide it to you. And that's in CTE outcomes data, in launch board data. That's the data we can give you, but the data that makes up social mobility is just too far and wide.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is, let me see if this, I'm trying to solve what I'm hearing here. So if we say 2 key areas, wage gains and internships, and then receive a report on how learn about it first. That's what you do. And then Erica explores ways in which social mobility can be tracked, and then you have a conversation, because you're in 2 different places right now. And then maybe in the next goals, when you do this, you'll say, oh yeah, we can do social mobility, or we can't, or whatever. You'll have a better understanding of it because you're in different
Yeah,
places.
Helen, I'm really okay that we can go ahead and take out social mobility. I can see that this is causing heartburn. So, I just think that let's identify those key areas. And I think one of the things that the CEO can do that we've talked about is, let's go through the launch board so that we do a primer, training, and that the trustees can more easily track or be more knowledgeable about how we track the progress on the launch board.
Sandra is up next.
Yes.
Go ahead, Sandra.
Again, to John's point, I also don't want to sound like a broken record either. I mean, we have a year to achieve these goals, and we have quite ambitious goals that we're setting up here. And, at some point, I would like to know what is our priority of these goals. I mean, we have 7. Are they all weighted the same? Are they all given the same amount of attention from the board, or student success is number 1, or student access is number 2? I would like to get some clarity as to. Yeah.
Let me make what we're going to do when we'll meet again to finalize these with the ad hoc committee, and we'll add another column, and that column would be timeline. So is this a 1 year, 2 year, like that? Because some of this stuff, and then you do a mid-year check in January in your meeting or retreat or whatever you do, you see where you are on these. And some of these you might say, oh, this was ridiculous. We never should have put this in. We'll take it out. You have to keep checking to see where you are on them. But a lot of this won't get done in 1 year. You won't have enough information to say you've reached it.
Right. So with the data on internships, perhaps we may have this data already, is to see how many of the internships translate into jobs, for how many of the employers hires our interns next year. Again, it's going back to that 1 year goal that we have. So for 2021, 2022, if we have 50 interns, did all 50 get jobs, or did 40 get jobs? I think that is more realistic. And that will also give me a sense of what the starting line is, post-pandemic at this time.
Right. And what the superintendent president needs to do is to come up with the forms for this, how much of this, what she can produce for you, or what can be produced. There's a lot of work just in setting it up.
Hey, Tony, question for you. I've seen your applause there.
I just want to say,
is that a hand raised for a question?
Yeah,
or is that
I just have just a comment that I had to get off my chest. I love Eric.
Go ahead.
And she's been very kind, but I'm teaching longitudinal studies next week. And most of us will be dead by the time you get results of the longitudinal study. So
Right.
You made me chuckle today, Erica. You're so kind.
Yeah, but I think the board needs to understand what's involved in it. When they have a right, you have a right to have a response to what you're asking and an understanding of it if it can't be done.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying.
So do we have a consensus on 4.1 that we're going to remove social mobility from this, but aside from that, keep this goal?
Yes.
Okay.
That's what I heard, I think.
That's what I believe I heard. So let's go ahead and move on to 4.2.
Build industry relationships for connections. You mentioned the Freeman Center to assist students in their career goals. And
I think that's a good goal. I don't see any hands up on this one. If everybody concurs, we'll move on. If you don't, please raise your hand. All right. All right. That's a consensus.
All right. So the 5th goal has to do with DEI. Ensure all policies and actions are viewed with DEI lens and all voices at PCC are empowered. 5.1, review and initiate policies to promote DEI and closing the equity gap. The president will establish a process for the board to review their DEI policies and information on what it takes to close equity gaps. And then policies will either be modified or developed and implemented to focus on closing the equity gap.
I like it.
Committee, does that work?
Again, with this one, I don't see any hands up. I think that's well stated. If everybody agrees, that's a goal, and we'll move on to the next one.
Okay, on this one, still on DEI, each trustee makes a commitment to participating in a DEI activity as a presenter, a participant, or a leader, and that's in 21-22. And then if it's needed, the superintendent president will assist the trustees in identifying their level of commitment or what they'll do. And I put as a metric, so you guys need to respond to this. Trustees commit and commitment discussed in board meeting and documented at end of year through board self-evaluation process.
So
this commits, so you guys have to decide whether you want to make this commitment.
Can I see that? Put it up on the screen. 6.1.
This is
5.2.
Yeah.
Oh, 5.2. I didn't see it.
Yeah. So I have just a quick question or comment on that, and that is just for these purposes, what's our definition of a DEI activity? Just so we know what everybody is signing up for here.
You know, I work at the Japanese American National Museum, so I feel like every day is a DEI activity for me. And I'm happy to have a private tour for this board on the museum, so you can check that off as the DEI activity. So, you know, to Jim's point, you know, what is expected and what do we want out of ourselves for this?
So the goal of DEI is that all trustees engage and commit to achieving and closing the equity gap. So you can be any number of things. You can attend a webinar, you can report out on it, you can be part of a work group. We actually have a presentation that's coming up, a webinar that several of our trustees will be participating in. It can be any number of things. So I think it's pretty flexible.
Okay. I'm okay with this as a goal. Let's do it. I see Erica, I see your hand up. Go ahead. You're on mute, Erica. There we go.
It seems to me the role of the superintendent isn't to assist you in identifying your level of commitment. It's helping you identify activities for this commitment, because you're going to determine your level.
Yes.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree with that. And I think as Dr. Benjamin has in the metric, you know, that we report out on it in the self-evaluation. So we'll evaluate ourselves whether or not we've achieved it.
John, your hand is up.
Thank you. So first off, just the mere fact that we as trustees are making this a board goal speaks to a level of commitment from the board. And I think that's important. Secondly, I'm a little careful in how I direct my fellow trustees to be trustees and things that they should or should not be doing. And so I have some natural resistance here to 5.2 because it's just getting a little too granular, shall we say, even though I appreciate the broader definition as Linda has described it. And third, and I think finally my comment on this is as I've expressed in the board meetings before, is I think sometimes there's a tendency for us to get too caught up in the conversation, too caught up in talking about these things. And what I am really concerned about is doing something real and substantive. So as a trustee who wants to see these gaps closed or wants to make sure equity is broad-based, I take the approach that I'd like to know, why is it why is it certain students are struggling or not completing at the same rate, or what are the challenges, and what can we do to help solve those specific problems? And I'm going to just reiterate a little bit I said at the last boarding for the benefit of our host, where we know students in the southern part of our district and in Northwest, which are in need of equity improvements, have shown us that they have a harder time connecting to the internet right now. We know that it's harder for them because of transportation patterns and distances to make it to PCC classes back when there were PCC classes to make it to. And I'm sure there's other problems that we haven't identified. And so, rather than talking all this talk over and over again, I would like to, as a board, focus on what can we do to help any student who's in trouble. And we know as a minority institution, if we can find the ways to help these students that are in trouble, that we will bridge these gaps, because that's who our students really are. How do we get there geographically where they need us to be? How do we support them in getting the online connectivity in their home or in a place where they can do it to reach these classes? I'm worried about those real results. And, telling me to be involved in an activity, I don't think is what we need. I think we need that kind of level of focus. I think the greatest activity I could be involved in right now to help DEI students is to try to make sure that we retain PCC Rosemead, which has been a tremendous blessing to the exact people we're trying to reach out to in an area that's difficult for students to make the main campus. To me, that's the DEI activity all over. So, I get a little bit passionate about this, but in a little bit different way, that I'm just don't want to hear the talk. I want to know the issues and say, what can I do to bridge that gap and help these students solve those particular issues?
Okay.
Trustee Martin, I do not know you very well, but if you could make that impassioned statement that you just made everywhere you went, you would be fulfilling that.
Yeah.
That would just be a huge help.
Yeah, and John, thank you for that. And next, the next sequence is Tony and then Linda. Tony, you're on mute.
I just want to say I support everything John just said. I probably feel a bit more comfortable if it said each trustee should, again, continue with should instead of makes a commitment. It's not on when I go file, that's not one of the requirements, but we all should make a commitment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Tony. Linda, you're up.
Yeah, I really like what John said also, but back to 5.2, I don't have a problem maybe rewording this a little bit. So adding should, I think is great. Maybe if you don't want to say that you're going to be a participant or a presenter or a leader, which I think is pretty broad, but I do think it's important for us to put it in our own self-evaluation and to put it in our goals. I think what it does is it sets us up as an example of how we are leading DEI as board members. It's an example to the rest of our stakeholders because we're all requiring them to show their commitment. It is one of the things, that we may recall was one of the criticisms we heard from one of the employee groups when we didn't vote for something. They said, well, we heard you talk the talk and adopt these resolutions, but we don't see you really taking action. So this is a way for the trustees to really put that stake in the ground and to demonstrate that, yes, we're standing with all of you, our constituents at the college, and we are also stakeholders in moving DEI.
Well, to that point, we also didn't vote to have, it was voted down to have a standing DEI board committee that our consultant recommended for the board, so we can, so there are things that, certainly the board can demonstrate. And I feel that, having DEI in the board goals may have, I don't know, been like a, may have been a way for us to make up for not having a DEI committee as a board. But I do think that in many ways, we can't come off as being performative with our DEI work. And I do think that, when we say that it's equity minded and all that, we have to have action that proves that we're doing that. And again, to me, it's impact. So for 2021 to 2022, what is going to be our impact on DEI within that 1 year? What are we looking to do for DEI in that 1 year?
Thank you, Sandra. And I'm gonna go next. And in part, I'm gonna respond to Sandra. We had a vote to establish a DEI standing committee, and we voted not to do that, not because we think that DEI is not important, but rather we felt those that voted in favor of not having the committee believe that the PCC way is we delegate to subcommittees. They do their work and they come back to the board, and the board generally is good about delegating and I'll call it rubber stamping just for purposes of describing it, the work that our subcommittees do. And those of us that voted against the subcommittee did that because we don't want to just delegate that to 3 members of our board. As your board chair, I have instituted the practice and hope it will continue that we have DEI on our agenda every single board meeting so that all 7 of the trustees are participating. So the fact that we don't have a committee isn't because we don't care about DEI, but actually it's because we want to see all of the trustees participate in every single board meeting in the DEI activity as opposed to just delegating it out. That vote has already been held, and I'm speaking on behalf of those in the majority that elected not to have that subcommittee. We shouldn't get all hung up on whether we have a subcommittee or not, but we should make sure that all of the board is involved in DEI activities. And again, that's why I put that on every agenda for every meeting. Let me move on though and reinforce what John was saying. And that is it's great to talk about DEI, but what are our actions going to be? So just for example, what I have heard is that the group that has been most impacted by schools, K-12, colleges, universities going from in-person to online are less fortunate, are most disadvantaged. So for example, the most important thing that we could do for DEI at PCC is reopen in-person classes as quickly and as safely as possible. And that would do if the most disadvantaged by not having our classes in person are the less fortunate in our community. The single most important thing that we could do is A, get the internet access and computers to our least our disadvantaged, and B, reopen as quickly and as safely as possible. And whether we put that as a goal here under DEI or not, and that's something the board has something to say about, because that has to do with commitment of resources to that activity. And when we talk about things, that's great, but where you really speak the loudest is as a trustee is when we allocate budgetary resources to those activities. So I'm not sure how we would incorporate that, or if we would incorporate that into DEI, but that's my personal belief about the single most important thing that we could do for DEI is get those resources to our least fortunate and reopen PCC as quickly and as safely as possible.
So Trustee Osterling, I just added two actions that I heard just for consideration. I don't know if you wanted me to do that or not, but I just put them in 5.3 and 5.4 for consideration. People want those for consideration under DEI.
Well, I personally would like that, but I always work on a consensus basis. I want to make sure that my fellow trustees also feel the same way about that.
I would concur with adding 5.3 and 5.4.
I would too, and I don't know if it's my turn, Jim.
John, you're up. Go ahead.
Yeah, but to parallel this a little bit, if this was an academic challenge, we have our academic team, our academic senate, the administration works with it, as Tony eloquently put, the teachers in the classroom on areas that how can we align the curriculum better so that we can facilitate students getting through quicker. Similarly, we know our student services department has done a lot of research in this area. We know there's many issues. I totally support what Jim just said. I think a great example of something the college did do was this computer loan program. So I appreciate the 5.3 and the 5.4 that you put on here. But just to circle back, because this has kind of come up again, to me, creating a board committee on this is just more board talking talk. And rather than board talking talk, I'd like to work with the administration and direct the administration the same way they do academically to come back with specific recommendations, look into what the issues are, which of those can we address? We probably can't address them all, but which of those can we address and what can we do and put our money where our mouth is to actually help these students? And that's what I mean, the difference between walking the walk and talking the talk. And that's why I didn't need another committee. I want the administration to engage the faculty and the staff the same way as we do in our academics and do so well. And I know they are, and come back to us with specific recommendations where we can support the students that need it most to help them stay in school, help them meet their objectives, help them get where they can go, which, as we discussed, is the heart of social mobility.
And we have, Erica, we have COVID funding to help our students achieve these things. I think we even have the resources available to do this, fortunately, thanks to our administration in Washington. Erica, I'm curious about your thoughts on this.
Well, I think this is what we've been doing for the last year. We've been identifying what students need and we've been addressing those needs. So we've provided computers, we've provided we've provided hotspots, we've provided food, we've provided rent payments to people who were in trouble. So this is what we're already doing. So I think what I'm doing is in the next couple of weeks working with my folks for a plan between now and September 30th, 2023, when the HREERF 3 monies run out or have to be spent, to make sure that we spread the money over that time period, both in terms of giving it out or allocating it out according to financial need and also having emergency funds available and utilizing money for meal delivery programs, for mental health programs. So it's fine because we're already doing it and we've been doing it for 13 months.
Yeah, and Erica, I think in part, I think you've done that very well. And I think in part, that's why, even though we've had an enrollment decline, our enrollment decline has been less than the state and the national average. So again, kudos to you and your administration.
Mhm.
Okay, Berlinda's hand is up. Sorry, I missed that, Berlinda.
I just wanted to go back to 5.2. What was the end result on that?
5.2.
Yeah, okay. So what did we decide on that?
We added the word should.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Tammy, I'm sorry, I missed that.
I have a question for Helen. This is my first time doing this, and this is a huge document with quite a list of goals, and it makes me nervous because it's just massive. Is this typical for colleges to have such a broad range of goals and so many goals?
Yes, it is. I mean, in your case, because you haven't done them in a while, and I think you just have a lot on your mind. I think if you were probably a little more practiced in it, it wouldn't be quite this way. But because we're going to put a timeline in here, and you don't have to get it all done at once, I think you could be okay. And then mid-year, you're going to look at them again, because these are all things you're feeling pretty good about. If the full board gives you the ad hoc committee the ability to maybe narrow these, maybe you only want 5 areas or something, there can be some direction given today about how you want to proceed. But
okay, that was a good question, Tammy.
that's why
Linda, your hand is up in the participant window.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just didn't lower it from last time. Sorry. No. Oh, you talked about Berlinda.
That's
Berlinda, right?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I thought we'd already covered you. Okay, so are we moving on to board goal number 6?
Yeah, let me get this written down.
Okay, Helen.
Okay. And some of this, this is off the top of my head, but hold on a second.
And one thing I just want to let everybody know is that if you want these board goals on the agenda for the 21st, they need to reach me by the end of the day next Wednesday, April 14th, because we have to post the agenda on Thursday because our college is closed on Friday. Okay.
What's on Friday, Erica?
It's the last day of spring break, and our college has always had that as a closed day.
Okay.
So even if we haven't finalized them, I mean, they're close to being finalized, we could always do it as a first reading, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So one way or the other, either as a first reading or as a final set, let's make sure we get this back to Erica no later than next
Wednesday at the end of the day, because
Yeah.
I'll have to make sure it's in the agenda packet on Thursday by noon, because that's when it will get posted.
Yeah.
So the ad hoc committee, I'll send them to you by noon tomorrow, hopefully tonight, but I want to give myself a little more time. Noon tomorrow for you to respond to. We can do them through email if you want.
Okay, thanks, Helen.
Thank you, Helen.
So board goal 6, professional development, strengthen the board by participating in professional development activities. Each trustee should complete an activity in a minimum of 1 of the competency areas listed below.
I agree with that goal. And if anybody's concerned about that, we've got Brown Act training coming up anyway.
Yeah, this is kind of automatic for you, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, and I actually hope that the trustees would, I think that we should commit to more than completing 1 competency area. I mean, these are 9 areas of competency in the ETP. Anyone who is doing the ETP, you can take up to 2 years to do it. But, most of these, like we already have the Brown Act, we already have DEI. Most of us have attended webinars, or we already have DEI, have attended DEI training with Dr. Rawl. I mean, we could already knock off 2 of these. So I hope that we would actually increase the number, and this should go into our self-evaluation, that we are moving forward and getting this, these areas, this training.
So we need
So-
to be overachievers and
Yeah.
do more than just two, because we
Well,
already have to.
one a year, I would call an underachiever.
I really need to be,
The
because we
last
already have
time,
two, so we need to do a little more.
the last time we talked about this, I put on the table the idea that we would all pass or recertify for ETP, and I was voted down, but I'll put that on the table again and see what everybody thinks about that. If that's.
Well, I think we have 4 ETP graduates, so,
Yeah.
you know, so only 3 more, you know, we could complete this, but I mean, I don't think it's hard to do, but like, as John said, you know, if we have trustees who just feel like they just don't want to be held to a prescription, a prescriptive mode, I guess,
Yeah.
that would be difficult. But for me, I would not have a problem. I mean, I would definitely do this because I think it's part of my role as a trustee to complete professional development in these areas.
Yeah, I would put that on the table again, but I would, as always, defer to my fellow trustees if they agree or not. I'd love to see all of us certify or recertify in ETP.
Okay, is everybody okay with this
Well,
one? Any objections?
I see John's hand up, so John, go ahead.
Okay, so I'm one of the ones that is certified, but I'm going to go back to my earlier comment that I am really slow to tell trustees how to be trustees. I think we will probably all do more than one, as Linda and Jim have pointed out. And honestly, it's okay to have one easy peasy goal on a list of 7 goals. So there's enough, you know, there's enough tough sledding in here to put one on here that's, you know, slam dunk, in my opinion, is okay. And yet it still, you know, makes the statement that we realize that ongoing training is always a part of the educational experience. So I'm good just the way it is.
John, well said. And Sandra, you're up next.
So I know that we are looking at our time. We have covered in our board goals, students. We have talked about the community at large. Do we need a goal here for how we work with faculty or what we expect, you know, in terms of our relationship with faculty? I just want to throw that out there to see where does faculty fit in this year for us.
I think if you do anything, it's with employees. Just
Okay.
my personal opinion, because everybody works for you.
Right. Okay. So employees, do we need to have
I
goal
would
here?
I would borrow from John Martin on that one, Sandra, and that is we only have one employee, and she's here right now. That's Erica. To the extent that some of us get more involved beyond that in some informal way and interact with employees and faculty at events and so forth, nothing wrong with that. But I don't think that we should have a formal goal that trustees should be interacting with employees because again, we have one employee and that's
Right.
Erica.
So then should we have as our board goal that we will complete the superintendent evaluation?
I don't think we need that. We will do that. I don't think it has to be a stated goal, but we will certainly do that.
The one of the things that some boards put, but you guys are in, I think maybe the 3rd year with Erica, is something about the relationship, ensuring that you have an effective partnership or something like that with the CEO. And then you state specific actions that you're going to take to ensure that you have that partnership. But then that's another whole thing. But that is typical.
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
Helen,
so we might put that in the CEO goals, even that we continue to build that CEO board relationship.
Yes.
let's put it there because we've got a lot on the table here. But
Yeah,
Helen,
there's a lot.
very good point. You know, that's really important for us as a board to make sure that we have a great working relationship with our superintendent. That's the single most important thing we can do, administratively speaking.
And, you say, you're going to support her, and I can tell there's a good relationship here, but it's good to have it stated. So there's no question.
Let's put that in our CEO goals, just because we've got a lot on the table here already. And
Right.
yeah, okay. But thank you for bringing that up.
So, Trustee Osterling, I think we're good with goal 6 as it is.
Yeah, everybody good with goal 6? All right, on we go.
And finally, ensure budget and resources aligned to support the board goals, particularly toward eliminating the equity gap. And the president would provide information showing resources allocated and spent on programs established to further goals and DEI commitments, and provide periodic updates on expenditures and progress. And the metric would be that the budget for 21-22 reflects that this particular action was taken.
I think this is a great goal. I think it's well stated. I don't see any hands up. Fellow trustees, are we all on board for this goal 7 as written?
Yeah, I just have one a comment on this, so that we can put it in for President Andronis, is to provide information showing resources allocated and spent on programs established to further goals. Should we add vision for success goals and DEI commitments so that we can be specific on vision for success?
I would be in favor of adding, after the word further, vision for success goals. I think I'd be in favor of that. John, your hand is up. John, you have the floor. You're on mute.
Sorry, just trying to work my way back to the mute button. Well, I, for one, would not call out DEI more than our other academic needs on here. But I'm having a sense from my fellow board members that they want to do that. I do think that we have to be a bit careful because, let's face it, probably the biggest challenge that we face and the superintendent faces is balancing our resources to meet current student needs with the needs of future students and the district's longevity. And I would appreciate a 7.2 on here that at least states that, or else in essence, what we're saying is our board goal is a license to kill, take every resource we've ever going to have. Obviously, we weren't going to do this, and I know Erica wouldn't do this, and throw it in this year to do whatever we need. And, that's, and again, that's an overstatement. I know Erica wouldn't, I know we wouldn't, but I do think it's important to identify the fact that we need to balance the need. We need to balance the current needs of students with the needs of future students and district longevity. And would think that might be an idea. Or long-term health, however you'd like to state that.
Our fiscal health is certainly, and this is again going back to 2021 to 2022 in this coming year. I mean, I would like for us to see how we need to recalibrate our budget based on the pandemic, and how do we need to monitor, or how do we monitor our finances in this time of the pandemic and post-pandemic. That doesn't include particularly, toward eliminating the equity gap, but it's more of our overall monitoring our overall fiscal health of the district. Okay, well, there you go. Okay.
All right, for Linda, your hand is up. You're on mute.
Oops.
You're on mute.
Linda, you're on mute.
I was saying my hand was up, but Sandra jumped in without being recognized for a second time. But anyhow, going back to this goal, I think it's important to have this DEI commitment stated in here, only because that has been one of my biggest concern regarding the allocation of resources. Going back to what John said earlier, talk, 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 talk. But at the end of the day, we are going to have to make some changes, some adjustments to be able to address the needs of these, the different things that we need, the students that are underserved, all the components, the equity, all of the concerns. So I think it is important for us to keep in mind as we do the resources that the budget cannot be allocated the way it has been allocated for the last 100 years. Because now we have some priorities that we're going to have to put in place. That's the only way we're going to be able to meet the needs other than talk. That's my 2 cents on that one.
Yeah, Berlinda, that's very well said. We can talk about this till we're all blue in the face, but either we allocate resources and get results from those resources. But rest assured, that's in this goal right here and staying in. So I think your point is well taken, and it's in the goal.
So I was about to write something here, but I don't want to write it unless I have permission. So the metric for this, ensure the long-term fiscal health of the district. And I don't know anything, Erica, about how the district budget is developed, but I was going to say the metric would be that your budget would be developed showing projections over, I was going to put a 5-year period, but do you guys?
We already do that. We already
Okay.
have
Just wanted to make sure. I wanted to make sure before I wrote it. Okay.
We already have a 3 to 5 year projection, so we incorporate that. But
okay.
But I am gonna need more guidance on this, because if Trustee Brown is telling me that I have to change the way that we fund things, I need more direction. Because if I'm gonna fund something, if you feel like something hasn't been funded, then I need to fund whatever it is you think I haven't funded, and I need to take that money from something. So I need to, that I just need, I will need more direction about what that means specifically.
Linda's hand is up, but let Linda respond, and then Linda will come to you.
Yeah.
So maybe I should clarify. What I mean is that because we know that all of this initiative on DEI, in order to address the needs of the students, that now suddenly become very important. So what are we going to do? Just talk about it? And where are we going to get the resources for the programs? That's really what I want to know. So that's really why I said what I said. It's going to have to come out of the money, a budget. So that's really what I'm trying to say.
Berlinda, thank you. And I'm going to turn it back to Erica. The good news is we do have funding, and Erica, you can quantify the dollars that we have.
Well, yeah, we do have funding, but that's COVID funding. And right. So
that's what I was
we have to be very careful about that, because it's one time, and it can only, and it's really about COVID. So that's on the institutional piece. Now with the direct student payment piece, we can provide direct student money. But, an example of kind of how I've shifted things is that, for example, when you all decided that you wanted to have John Muir and you created PCC Northwest, no one at the college budgeted for that. So there was no personnel budgeted, there was nothing. And so that's what we're working on right now, trying to figure out, especially as we transition back face-to-face, how do we properly staff that facility? Because there was no plan. And so I think that that's probably an example of what Trustee Brown is talking about. But those will be the things that we need to have more conversation about, because I need to understand what is it you think has not been funded, because the emergency aid, absolutely, we're doing that and we can, but this is more systemic in nature. So we need to look at how are we going to do ongoing funding? Because that's really what we have to look at. That's what I meant.
Okay.
Yeah.
Linda, you're next.
Yeah, so I think, this is called for as a best practice in DEI, that we connect our budget and our funding to accomplishing these initiatives. So I think it's probably something we're already doing. I think that, I think Trustee Silver may have asked for this in the budget committee, that we look at the budget and how it's allocated programmatically so that we know whether or not those initiatives that we have asked for as high priorities, whether or not there is sufficient funding, and if there's not, that we have some advice from the CEO superintendent, this is how many eggs are in the basket, and either we have to move some eggs over or not. And I think that will help us in the conversation.
I'm not in this conversation, but may I just make an observation, provide a comment?
Yes.
In the budget you already have, I know I could just name like 5 things right now that are in there that you already have in there that are devoted to the equity gap. Anything around tutoring, any services, like any kind of support services, all that money you're already spending, that's what it's for. And additional money can be designated otherwise, but you have a lot of money in your budget already designated for that. That's ongoing.
Yeah. EOP&S money.
I agree.
There's all kind of stuff there.
Sure. The college promise. I mean, a lot of this is already
There's
funded.
a lot of stuff you've got already.
Yeah. All right. Hey, Helen, I can't thank you enough for facilitating this. We have a great group of trustees here, but we've had difficulty really honing in and nailing down our board goals and getting them finalized. And you've been incredibly helpful to do that. And thanks to all of the trustees for a really lively discussion that we all participated in. So to finish up the action steps we've already talked about, Helen is going to work with our subcommittee to take all of the discussion we've just had and turn it into a revised set of board goals, and that will be delivered to Erica on or before the end of the day on Wednesday. And we'll either do that as a first reading, or we can also do it as a finalized set of goals that we can vote on.
Okay, well, thank you very much for having me. I will get this done by noon tomorrow and send it out. So thank you. Have a great weekend. Don't stay there too long.
Thanks, Dr. Benjamin.
And I do see John Martin's hand up before we go to our next agenda item. John, anything else on this topic? John, you're on mute. We'll wait a second more. You guys, it's 4:45, and actually I think we're in good shape time-wise. The next item is the fellowship project, and I'm pretty sure we can get through that in the remaining time. Let's see, Linda, how do we want to do this? Sandra, go ahead.
Yeah, I want to make sure I have my time, my hand up so that I'm not going before John, since he still has his hand up.
Yeah. So here's what we're going to do. Sandra, you're up next, and then John, when he gets unmuted, he'll be after you.
Okay, terrific. What is the timeline for us to vote on these board goals? If we have our first reading in at our April board meeting, would we be voting on the board goals in our May board meeting?
Myself, personally, I'm comfortable with where these are going, that we could put them on the April agenda and vote on them. But I'm just one of 7 trustees. But I feel like I have a flavor for the changes that are going to be made that we're going to be looking at our next board meeting. And I think it'll be finalized enough that we could vote on them. That's my view. How does everyone else feel?
Yeah, I agree with you.
I think it's important that we turn this in, the committee will review it, I guess, Monday or Tuesday, right? Send it in to Erica. We had a lengthy discussion. I think we're on the right track, but we actually kind of pressure for time. We're a little bit pressure for time, and as we go through these, the second part of our retreat, you'll find out that we do need to have our goals, and we do need to. So we hope we can approve it at our meeting. That's really the hope.
Yeah. So
At our
let's
April
not,
meeting, at our
yeah.
April meeting.
let's not have it be an information item in a first reading. Let's have it be a final set of goals. And everybody, let's keep in mind, we can recalibrate these goals at some point in time throughout the year. So yeah, let's go for a action item in April. And John, are you ready to go, sir?
Yeah, I am, and I apologize. I was on some Zoom rabbit hole where I was trying to figure out how to get back to turning my mute button off. So
Okay.
I just wanted to ask if we did decide to add the 7.2 comment about balancing future
Yes.
needs or not. Okay, thank you. I didn't quite see that, and so thank you.
Okay. Okay, now Linda and Berlinda, how do we want to go about the next item, which is the trustee fellowship? And what I'm getting at, does somebody have something ready to go for a share screen?
Well, the board document it's in the board docs. So it's
Yeah.
the attachment. So just bring up the attachment, and then Jim, you and Berlinda can lead through on the questions. So the questions are already in the template.
So here's what we'll do. I'm going to, I do have this up, and I'm going to do a share screen, and everybody else also has it in your agenda package. And then we'll go through this. And again, I think we can, here we are. Okay.
I trust we had a chance to review this because this was sent, I guess, a couple days ago.
Yeah.
Okay.
So just a quick background. This is the California Community College's Trustee Fellowship, the Intercession Project, and we were selected as one of the groups to participate in this, and there is a modest stipend to help administrate this. But this is a planning template for our board, and the reform strategy. It's first of all revolves around a reform strategy, and our reform strategy is to eliminate the equity gap. So all of the rest of these questions and so forth that you will see revolve around that goal, that reform strategy. Now, the worksheet that you see in front of you, Erica and Berlinda and Linda and myself have worked on to present to the full board. And we want to get your comments on what you see here. And then we're submitting that on or before the 15th, which is next Thursday. So that's the background information. And what I thought we would do is just go through the questions. There's several pages of questions on this, and have everybody look at the questions and our responses. And if there's any trustee input into those responses, we can make changes, and then we'll submit again on or before the 15th. So we are on the share screen, and again, you have this. We're on page 3 of this exercise. Oh, pardon me. I need to start at page 2, and here we are. So part 1 is understand why institutional change is important. And again, this revolves around the reform strategy or the goal of eliminating the equity gap. And question number one, as you can see, what are the conditions, including those in our service area, that the college can address through focusing on this goal? And the answer to the right is that we're going to be provided disaggregated student achievement data so we can look at our student success metrics across that disaggregated data. And of course, the objective is that we have we reduce and eliminate the success gap between the different ethnic groups. So that's number one. If anybody has any questions or comments or refinements, now would be the time. And I see John's hand's up, and I see Sandra's hand is up, and I'm going to start with Sandra.
Jim, I'm just wondering if you can share your screen a little larger, the font, but if not, I have my other template. So
yes, let me do that. Is that better?
I don't know if other trustees need to see a bigger font, but
Thank you, Sandra.
Yeah, this is better, Jim.
Okay,
And let me take it one more. How's that?
That's
Yeah,
great.
this
Thank
is
you.
fine.
Okay.
All right, so this is part one, question one. Any questions, comments, or requests for changes? I thought this one was pretty straightforward.
Yeah, so the other part of the question, though, is to ask the trustees then, how will you convey this community data to the entire board? So does the entire board understand what it is that we're asking for that we will be provided?
Right, and thank you, Linda. And the answer is that we're going to periodically look at the receive and review the disaggregated student achievement data. Probably the logical time frame is each semester. Quarterly would be too frequent, I think, because each quarter is not necessarily a new semester's results to report.
Yeah, but it can't be like right when that semester ends, because we have to collect data and we have to analyze it. So there has to be, you have to give us time.
Absolutely. And we're not getting that specific here, but Erica, you're correct. So, you know, roughly speaking, what would the lag period be between the end of a semester and when we would report out? Roughly?
I don't know. I will have to ask
Okay.
Crystal. I have no idea.
Yeah, and we don't have to. And we don't have to
Jim,
specify that here anyway, so we're okay. Linda, you're up.
But Jim, we could actually clarify that one before we turn in the report on the 15th. So, you know, whatever Erica asks to put down that feels like a comfortable timeline, you know, we can add that.
Yeah, you can, Erica, you can add a realistic lag factor for the reporting out, and agreed, you need to aggregate the data and so forth. Sandra, your hand is up.
Okay, so my question, and I don't know if this is an appropriate place to ask or if there is even an answer to this, is, you know, how we have talked about not using the reference gaps or, you know, learning loss or things like that. So when we talk about the narrative of using data, how do we present that data? And the other question that I have is, in particular for APIs, you know, I'm sensitive to the fact that when we compare data, you know, it shows API, you know, outperforming maybe some of the other ethnic groups, and it sets this, you know, it sets API students in a way that somehow, you know, they're excelling at a rate that they may not need further help. Or so I don't know what the answer is to that. I just want to know what is the best practice around that right now.
Well, Sandra, that's a good question. I'll give you my views on that, and that may or may not be everybody else's. Our goal here is to eliminate the equity gap, And without worrying about the proper semantics and what the politically correct way is to say that, others might have better words about how to say that. I don't know any way that you can eliminate the equity gap if you don't define achievement and break it out by different groups and measure that achievement. And we'll call that our benchmark. And then continually monitor that data and see if we're moving the needle and making improvements. And to answer your question, yes, if we're doing that, we are disaggregating the data and we're reporting performance by different groups. There's probably other groups besides this that we might call out, and it will call attention to what the current levels of achievement are for these different groups. And we know they're different, and our goal is to eliminate that gap. And I don't know any way to do that other than putting that data on the table and then directing the resources of the college to reducing and eliminating that gap. Anybody else have a thought on that?
Yeah, so I agree with that, Jim. I do think that I had not heard that we were told not to use leading and leading indicators or lagging indicators, but I think that's pretty common to use that as sort of baseline data, and then where do we identify the gaps. But also the whole purpose of disaggregating the data, which we have now collecting disaggregated data across the entire system for the last couple of years. So this will then identify those groups that were previously hidden under umbrella groups like the APIs. Could be also, we expanded the African American groups, we expanded the Native American groups, the Middle Easterners, so a lot of the Latinos. So all these groups have been expanded. So it will identify those groups that were previously lumped under umbrella groups. And I believe that it's called out even in accreditation that we would be reporting out on the disaggregated numbers.
Tammy, your hand is up.
Yeah, the educational master plan is a thoughtful document that was created collaboratively with the faculty, and I know Crystal was involved, other people. It's excellent. Why can't we just do whatever we can to support the educational master plan? They have metrics, they have strategies, and it's everything we want for our college. So can't we just support the existing plan?
I'm not sure what you're asking, Tammy.
Well, it seems like we're creating more things, and this plan already exists. Why can't we match our I'm not quite sure what this worksheet is. Why can't we match what we want to what the college already wants?
Yeah, Tammy, that's a really good question, and I'll try to answer that. So we signed up for this trustee fellowship activity, and I think it was intentional that we selected a goal that the college already has, so we're not really making additional new separate goals, but rather this exercise is supporting an existing goal and a pretty important one, eliminating the equity gap. So I understand your question. Do we need, to have a whole new bureaucracy around a whole new set of goals? And the short answer is no, because we're just going to be reporting out on this stuff anyway as part of the educational master plan. And this is just, we're reporting this element of it to the chancellor's office. Erica and Linda, how would you respond to Tammy's question?
Well, I could maybe, I don't know if this will clarify this for you, Tammy, we're not creating any additional goals. So the purpose of the fellowship program is to create a culture with the board and in partnership with the CEOs, considering that we're the top leaders of our district. So we developed policies and we developed the goals, and it's really to create a culture that is more engaged. So the trustees will be working more closely to create this partnership with the CEOs, so that we work more closely to identify, to track the data, and to make sure that we understand whether or not we are moving the needle. I think that in the past, what has likely happened is we do receive data. Maybe we're not as inquisitive as we could be, or maybe we're not asking more questions about, why do we have these gaps? And this is one of the things I think they were seeing across the system is we've recognized these gaps existed, and we keep putting resources in, but somehow we're not really tracking what the progress is. So it's just a way to kind of change that culture of how the trustees now operate in partnership with the CEOs.
So it's kind of like taking the EMP, which is grounded in the Vision for Success goals, and turning it into a narrative for the board to have discussions. And so that in some ways it's not different. It's just adding, it's more like a narrative description of what you already agreed, or what we already agreed our goals are. I mean, so two things. The first is, this is a project. Somebody decided that this would be a way to engage trustees. And so a lot of this, quite frankly, is designed for boards that don't have 4 people on DEI task forces across the state. That's one thing. The second thing is, you are correct, Sandra, that I would really like to not use the term equity gap. That's why on the second one, I wrote, if we want to achieve 100% success by all of our students by 2027, the goal there, I know I need to fix something. That's, in my mind, a better way to say equity gap, but unfortunately, that's the common parlance, because there's either equity gap or there's managing the opportunity gap. And the opportunity gap is problematic because we're addressing students who come to us, and if they're with us, then they're exercising then they are gaining on their opportunities. So it's not really, that doesn't really describe what it is we're trying to do, which is make 100% of the students who cross our threshold successful. So I would like to come up with different terminology, but I haven't figured it out yet.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, Tammy, that was actually a really good question. And frankly, I asked somewhat the same question when we signed up for this. But again, I think it's just to increase our board awareness of the goal. It's not to create new goals and new metrics, fortunately. Sandra, I see your hand up.
So are we committed to doing this? I mean, I want to know, are we creating more work for more work's sake, or do we see real impact and benefit of doing this? I'm just curious to know.
Well, whether we do this or not, we're committed to reducing and eliminating the equity gap.
Right.
But
I mean, this project in particular.
Yeah, does this project create more work for Erica in her administration? I'll let her answer that, but I think not, in the sense that it's a goal that we're already committed to anyway.
The work that it creates for us is basically having to fill out this document and having to make seriously, and having to make a presentation on the 23rd that I don't particularly want to make. I don't understand why the CEOs have to do a poster session, because this is not a CEO training program. This is a trustee fellowship program. So why I have to make a presentation about what we're doing is a mystery to me. So I think this is basically just another way that you all are engaging in a conversation about what we just spent 2.5 hours looking at. And that is developing your goals, connecting them back to the vision for success, and our EMP. I personally do not think this program or this project was designed for this district because we're already way past everyone else.
Yeah.
So let's put it a different way. On Thursday, April 22nd, we are the program for the trustees call. We were the presenters at the town hall on April 1st. And yet, here we are filling out paperwork that makes it look like we've got to be intentional about doing the work that, guess what, folks, you're already doing. So
Yeah.
we're doing it, but I don't really think this project was designed for us.
Yeah. But we signed up for it. We're committed
I
to
know.
it.
I know. It's work.
We're almost finished. And Erica, your observations are spot on. And maybe one way of looking at it, and Tammy, I'll get to you. Maybe one way of looking at it is I think other districts in California do look to us as a leader, and I think we really are. And I think the fact that we undertook this, I think Erica's right. This exercise might really be designed for a board that's less engaged than ours, to try to get them to be more fully engaged. And I think this is a great board and is very committed to the mission and very engaged.
Well, I do want to remind us that when we did this fellowship program, we were not the number one board. I think we got in because we had created this awareness. So it's true. While I am happy that we are the number one board making progress in this, and people are looking to us as a leader, I think it's, this is not hard for us to do. This is just filling out a report, but it's also calling to attention to all the board members that this is what we're committing to. Ask the questions now. If you need more information, do you understand this? It's creating that awareness of this is what you need. This is what we need to track whether or not we're making progress, and it's creating that awareness and kind of changing that culture of not being a rubber stamp board, which I don't think we were truly a rubber stamp board. Some things we do rubber stamp, but this is really being more intentional about looking at that data and really tracking the data.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. That was a really good question, Tammy. Okay. I think we've answered number 2. Okay. 3 is easy. How does a focus on this goal connect to the vision for success? And I'm going to skip part 2 about how will you help the full board understand these connections, because I think we understand them. If you don't, we can raise our hand here. But this is easy. The Chancellor's Office has set a goal that we eliminate the equity gap by 2027. We support that. We're aware of that goal, and we're going to strive to achieve it. Unless there's any questions, I'm going to move on. We're now on to part 2, and that's understanding the strategy. Okay. What does the board not know about the strategy, the model, the challenges, implementation, pertinent data? Who's the best person to share this information with the board, and how can this information be clearly shared with the board? Okay, in our response, the board's still gathering data on the gaps, and the student services, HR, and the academic senate are the best persons to share information. And we do have a board committee, a subcommittee, and these reports are agendized at monthly board meetings. How does the reform strategy align with the goal? The board is determined they're committed to the success of all of our students. They're interested in understanding what strategies are being employed to achieve this goal and will receive regular updates. Again, if anybody has questions as we go along, blurt out or raise your hand. Number 3, how does the reform strategy integrate with a college-wide, holistic, equity-focused student effort? How will you help the full board make these connections? Okay.
The mission statement?
Yeah, the mission statement already articulates that we have an equity-minded focus on student success. As it says here, and I believe it's true, every corner of the college is focused on student success. Range of services, implement DEI, and then regular updates to the board. Number 4, and again, just interrupt me as we go through this. How will you build understanding of the goal and reform strategy in the special session? That's today, our retreat. How will you help the board make connections between the reform strategy, the goal, and the community context? Some of this, I think, is kind of redundant in my opinion. I think the board understands the goal and the strategies to achieve the goal. And again, the goal that we're talking about here is eliminating the equity gap. And we'll be, we as a board, we're going to be focused on this by, having the administration report periodically on results, but also the initiatives they're undertaking to achieve those results. Okay, here's a good one. I might turn to Linda for this one. What leading and lagging indicators will you recommend the full board use to monitor the strategies? How will you identify these metrics? And how will you disaggregate the data? Okay, reports at the end of each semester. And again, Erica, with a sufficient lag so you guys can gather the data. Regularly schedule reports, schedule special sessions to discuss the disaggregated data.
That's it.
Okay, and then plan to move the board to action. And again, I think Erica's comments already made are worth repeating. This is not a passive board. It's already an active and engaged board. So I'm not too worried about what we're going to need to do here to, pardon me, about how we get the board to move to action. What's the process for how the board will monitor the progress to these goals? It's kind of repetitive, but that's the way the form works. They're going to be, the data points are going to be identified and monitored regularly. And again, this is the disaggregated data on our outcomes and seeing if we're reducing and eliminating the gap. How are we going to focus the board interactions on the goals? How will we use our time in meetings to further understand the strategy and periodically monitor? And the answer to that is, we're going to monitor during meetings and we'll have additional meetings and study sessions and retreats as needed to review the progress. My own personal opinion on this one is this is just going to be regular reporting out of our student, of our success metrics and disaggregating them. So I don't see a lot of special study sessions or retreats. I think we all understand this. And we've already talked about this in our board goals. How do we align the vision, policies, and budgets to achieve the goals? So we have this goal and we need to allocate budgetary resources to make sure we achieve the goals. If we don't allocate resources, we probably aren't going to achieve the goal. Mm-hmm. Board round CEO evaluations. Discuss potential changes to the CEO evaluation to align it more clearly to the goals in the reform. Okay, we are going to have a, it says an ad hoc board goals, but that board goal subcommittee will also be will help us to identify the CEO goals and make sure the board goals and our CEO goals are aligned. Again,
Well, I think that's something that we will discuss in closed session in April under my evaluation, because first of all, we cannot talk about my goals in an open session, and this is an open session because they're my goals, and we need to negotiate them. And so we'll have a conversation. That's why the board goals form that you were looking at had kind of the role of the CEO, but it didn't specifically say, this is my goal, because it's more of a matrix of alignment, because there's a lot of overlapping things in what you all talked about in your 7 goals. So we will have this conversation in closed session, because we have to approach it a little bit differently than the development of the board goals.
Okay, Sandra, your hand is up.
Is there a timeline for the CEO evaluation?
Yes, the timeline, the goals that we're talking about are similar to your board goals in that they will pertain to 21-22. My board, so you all have to do an evaluation of me by June 30th. And that evaluation is going to be based on what I did this last year. So it's not related to the goals that we're talking about. So similar to you all coming up with your board goals for 21-22, that's what we're doing in identifying my goals. But then similar to how you did my evaluation last year, remember I did a self-evaluation, and then you each did, you answered a survey, and then you provided comments.
Right. Going into your 3rd year though, right, there is going to be a survey, right? I mean, that's what will be different going into your 3rd year.
Well, we have to talk about how we're
okay.
doing that, because there's an administrative procedure that talks about my 3rd year having a survey, but that's not actually in my contract. So we have to have a conversation about how we do that. But we don't need to do that now, because we're just talking about establishing those goals.
Okay.
I know you're very concerned about getting a survey out. I know, because you raise it all the time. So.
Oh, well, student survey, faculty survey. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Sandra, are you referring to a 360 survey, not just the board, but the other campus groups?
Yeah, because that's what I recalled when we were doing the search, when we talked to the search consultants, on when we were doing the search on what would be part of a CEO evaluation, the survey came up. So it's not to you personally, Erica. It was a conversation. It was a conversation that took place, before the search took place.
Right. We have to go back and look at my contract, because my contract didn't include a survey, but your board bylaw does. So we have to negotiate what that looks like.
Okay, and that's actually a good segue. I went back to our agenda for the meeting to item number 6, which is our 6th and final item, and that's the board self-evaluation timeline. And we can discuss that as much as needed here at the retreat, but basically the game plan is we're going to appoint a subcommittee to prepare a board self-evaluation survey, and the rough timing of that is approximately similar to the timing for our CEO evaluation as well. And we can get into it at more detail than that if you'd like right here, but that's the game plan. All right. Hey, you guys, it's 5:23. We're actually ahead of schedule, which is awesome. And unless there's any more, anything else we need to discuss, I'm ready to adjourn.
Me too.
And thank you, everybody, once again for giving up your time to be locked into a Zoom session when we have such a beautiful day outside. So let's adjourn early and enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you again, everybody.
Thank you.
Good job. Thank you.
Bye.
Erica.
Yes.
Those are great
Erica.
cookies.
Yes, and yes, Tony.
Can I talk to you a minute?
Yeah, but you know what? Let's hang on.
Everybody could hear it anyways. Who do I contact? I went to my orthodontist this week who's in Arcadia, and it seems like there's really a need for nurses. He's had to cut his practice. And who do I contact at PCC for job opportunities?
That would be Salvatrice
Oh, okay.
in the Freeman Center.
Okay.
Connect to her, and then she'll get connected.
Because there seems to be a real shortage of nurses.
Well, that was your orthodontist. They needed a nurse.
Yeah, he said they've hired, they can't hire. There's nobody out there. And he's had to cut his practice in half even. I said, well, I'll see it because I know we have a great program. So
Yes, we do. Our nursing program is excellent. Mhm.
okay, have a good weekend. Nice to
Okay,
see.
thank
I hope
you.
I could have lunch with you someday.
That would be nice.
Bye-bye, Erica.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah, thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of your weekend.
You
Bye-bye.
too. Bye.